Despite the chill in the room, an air of unrest and despondency persisted. Valentine Anderson stood by the wall, his distinctively curly hair and pointed nose giving him a handsome, yet troubled appearance. Despite his good looks, his face bore a darkness, with furrowed lines creasing his forehead. As he gazed at Andrea Singers, who was sitting on the bed, barely gripping the pen, his disgust only deepened. "How much longer will you stubbornly refuse to sign the divorce papers, ugly fatty? I don't love you anymore. And haven't you had enough of my infidelity?" Valentine Anderson's voice carried an edge of anger as he addressed Andrea Singers. Gone were the days of endearing names. Instead, the mention of divorce had become a frequent occurrence, yet Andrea Singers remained steadfast in her resistance. Valentine had even gone so far as to bring his mistress, Rose Ferguson, into their marital bed in an attempt to disgust Andrea into agreement, but still, she resisted. Andrea Singers looked up and met the gaze of the man she had devoted her heart, body, and soul to for the past 5 years. All that remained on his face was disgust and contempt. The man who had once loved her passionately seemed to have vanished into thin air. Her cheeks trembled as she spoke. "Honey, I don't want to end our marriage. I still love you." Valentine. Anderson's expression darkened at Andrea's words. She quickly lowered her head in fear. Tension filled the room, and Valentine's chest heaved rapidly as he simmered with anger. The ringing of a phone shattered the tense silence. Valentine reached into his pocket and retrieved his phone. His dark face lit up in joy when he saw the caller, but as he glanced at Andrea Singers, a look of disdain crossed his sharp features. "Fatty, if you think we're staying married, wake up from your delusion. I won't live with someone who just eats and gets fat," he sneered, his words cutting deep. With that, Valentine Anderson strode toward the door, leaving Andrea Singers in tears, her forehead glistening with sweat. She stared at the papers on her lap, her distress growing. She threw the pen away and tossed the divorce papers. The divorce papers fluttered briefly before scattering across the polished marble floor. Andrea Singers struggled to her feet, her movements resembling that of a rolling meatball as she dashed toward the door. Despite her efforts, it took her 3 agonizing minutes to reach the door, which was only 5 feet away from the bed where she had been sitting. By the time she burst out of the once loving, glorious matrimonial bedroom, she was drenched in sweat from the exertion. As she stumbled out, Andrea overheard Valentine Anderson speaking on the phone as he moved closer to the staircase from the doorway. "Rose, I promised you I would divorce that meatball. If my wife hadn't resisted, I would have divorced her long ago," he said. Andrea stood frozen, unable to comprehend how her marriage had deteriorated so drastically in just 5 short years. A few months ago, despite her efforts to regain her shape by hitting the gym, she rapidly gained a significant amount of weight. As a result, her husband, Valentine Anderson, began to distance himself from her. They no longer shared kisses, and their once passionate sex life grew cold. Valentine started coming home late, sometimes drunk, with the lingering scent of feminine perfume. When Andrea Singers confronted him about this, he mentioned the possibility of divorce. The more Andrea thought about the situation, the more anxious she became. She ran to the gate, startling the gatekeeper. "Water!" she gasped as she struggled to speak. Her legs, which had grown significantly in size, trembled from the brief run. After gulping down 3 mouthfuls of water, she hurried out of the gate and hailed a taxi, leaving the gatekeeper shocked. "Number 23, Downhill Street," she told the taxi driver, breathing heavily and sweating. Without a word, the taxi driver nodded and started the car. An hour later, he pulled up at the address Andrea had given him. Anxious and nervous from the lengthy drive, Andrea bolted out of the car, completely forgetting about the fare. "Miss, you haven't paid," the taxi driver called after her as she made a beeline for the gate. Halfway there, Andrea halted in realization, her body quivering. She turned back, acknowledging that she had left her purse behind and had no means to settle the fare. "Miss, please settle the fare," the taxi driver urged, as Andrea Singers stood before him feeling disoriented. The gate creaked open behind them, and two elderly women emerged. Andrea's energy surged as she turned and called out, "Mother-in-law!" Mrs. Anderson's expression soured as she instinctively covered her nose, asking impatiently, "Andrea, what are you doing here looking so disheveled and sweaty?" Andrea Singers blushed in mortification as the taxi driver's irate voice cut through their exchange. "Miss, you still haven't paid. How can you enter my taxi and refuse to pay? I assumed you were wealthy, stopping me in an affluent neighborhood. Who would have thought you were just a fraud? I'll involve the police if you persist in refusing to pay." Mrs. Anderson, already upset that her fat, ugly daughter-in-law had arrived unannounced after she had just finished boasting about her son to her neighbor, grew even more frustrated upon hearing the taxi driver's comments. She fixed a piercing gaze on Andrea Singers and admonished, "Andrea, if I had known you would turn out this way, overweight and unproductive, I would never have allowed my son to marry someone like you. Aren't you tired of bringing shame upon the Andersons? If word gets out that my son's wife is attempting to defraud a taxi driver, how do you think the media will respond? Show a little dignity, Andrea." Andrea felt embarrassed and wished she could disappear. The taxi driver, caught up in the difficulties of surviving the economic meltdown in Vegas, didn't have the luxury of time to listen to Mrs. Anderson scolding her daughter-in-law. "Madam, if you have the money, please pay me," the driver interjected, cutting through the tension. Mrs. Anderson shot Andrea a look of contempt before settling the transport fare with the driver. Then, she turned to her neighbor. She then forced a smile and addressed her. "Mrs. Wilshire, I will come to your home in the evening." With that, Mrs. Anderson dismissed the neighbor. Mrs. Anderson turned sharply to Andrea Singers, fixing her with a piercing gaze that seemed to convey a desire to consume her whole. Her lips curled in a sneer as she spoke. "Andrea Singers, I fail to comprehend what my son sees in you. You are overweight, unattractive, and sorely lacking in the grace expected of a president's wife. Do you truly believe yourself worthy of my son?" In a flustered state, Andrea Singers hastily replied, "Mother, I apologize. I'm terribly anxious and distressed, which is why I hurried here in such a state. I even left my car behind. There's something of great importance that I need to discuss with you." Despite her disdain for Andrea Singers, upon hearing her words, Mrs. Anderson relented and extended an invitation inside the house. Once settled in the living room, Mrs. Anderson observed with growing irritation as Andrea fidgeted nervously, her fingers twisting together in silence for the past 2 minutes. "Andrea Singers, have you come to visit me just to twiddle your fingers? Are you so bored with overfeeding that you've come up with such a grand idea?" Mrs. Anderson snorted impatiently, gazing at the once beauty who had reigned over Vegas for years, now looking like a shadow of her former self. She found it unbearable. Andrea Singers had once been a source of her pride and boasting, but now she is the source of her mockery and ridicule. Mrs. Anderson couldn't bear looking at her face any longer. "Speak up. If you have nothing to say, then leave." Mrs. Anderson lost her temper and shouted. Andrea Singer's entire fleshy body trembled as she struggled to kneel before Mrs. Anderson. Gritting her teeth, she gathered the courage to speak. "Mother, you know how much I love Valentine. Lately, he's been cheating on me with another woman. I even caught them together in our bed. Despite everything, I still love him. I don't want to divorce him. Please help me talk to my husband." Mrs. Anderson's face lit up with joy, as she hadn't anticipated Valentine divorcing Andrea. It was evident to her that her son had finally come to his senses. Turning to Andrea, she exclaimed, "Just look at yourself. No man would want to marry a woman who is overweight and unattractive. If you had taken better care of yourself, things might have turned out differently. Andrea's face, streaked with tears, betrayed her shock as she struggled to comprehend that her previously supportive mother-in-law could utter such words. Mrs. Anderson wasn't done yet, she went on. Andrea, infidelity should never be tolerated in a marriage. If my son is being unfaithful, you should divorce him. It's better for both of you to end things sooner rather than later. A marriage should be based on trust, loyalty, and love. If those things aren't there, what's the point of staying in such a marriage? Andrea Singers was stunned by Mrs. Anderson's words, which made it clear that her mother-in-law supported her son's actions. Without hesitation, Andrea sprang to her feet and exclaimed, "No, I will not divorce Valentine. I will not give up on my husband." With a sense of urgency, she turned and hurried out of the room, leaving Mrs. Anderson to sneer at the sight of her trembling figure. Despite Andrea's dramatic exit, it took her a while to finally leave the room, her departure marked by disdainful silence. Outside Anderson's home, Andrea ran anxiously, convinced that staying any longer would cost her not just her happiness, but perhaps even her life. As she fled, she realized she had no money for her transport back home. As she turned around, the gatekeeper met her gaze with a sympathetic look. "Miss Andrea, it seems you're short on transport fare to get home. Please take this and use it for your journey," he said as he stepped forward and placed some crumpled dollar bills into Andrea's open large palm. Tears welled up in Andrea's eyes as she looked at the gatekeeper's kind gesture. Sensing her emotional response, the gatekeeper offered words of comfort. "Mrs. Andrea, there's no need to cry. You must stay strong. If you lose hope and give in to weakness, you'll never achieve anything with that kind of mindset." Andrea took the gatekeeper's words to heart, expressing her gratitude before hailing a taxi and heading to the location of Benita Valentine's young sister's shop. After marrying Valentine, Benita had become very close to Andrea Singers, but recently their friendship had cooled. As Andrea settled the taxi fare, Benita, accompanied by two female friends, spotted her. "Isn't that your sister-in-law?" asked one of Benita's friends. Benita's expression soured. "Don't talk nonsense. How could that overweight, unattractive woman be my brother's wife? My brother's wife is the most beautiful lady in Vegas." Upon hearing Benita's words, her friends fell silent, unwilling to provoke her further. Benita, adamant in her refusal to acknowledge Andrea as her sister-in-law, instructed the manager to prevent Andrea from entering the store. "Mrs. Andrea, I'm sorry, but Madame Benita isn't in the store right now. Perhaps you should come back later," the polite security doorman informed her. He couldn't believe that the woman he had always admired whenever she visited the store had become obese. "I'll wait for her here," Andrea Singers replied, her head lowered in embarrassment. She felt too ashamed to meet the security doorman's gaze after realizing what he might be thinking. The scorching summer sun beat down relentlessly, and when the security doorman refused to let Andrea Singers into the building, she settled down by the door to wait. As time passed, her movements became sluggish, and exhaustion weighed heavily upon her, lulling her into a deep, drowsy state. Benita grew increasingly incensed as Andrea continued to doze by the entrance to the store. She thought Andrea was intentionally causing a disturbance. "Benny, even if you don't consider her your sister-in-law, she's still your brother's wife. You can't let her sleep outside like that. People will start gossiping about it," it is one of Benita's friends cautioned. Benita's expression darkened. "See," she was about to offer a sharp reply when her phone suddenly began to ring. Her heart sank as she glanced at the caller ID, causing her to hesitate before answering the call. The angry voice of Valentine came from the phone's speaker. "Benny, have you lost your mind? How could you allow my wife to sleep outside your store?" If anything happens to Andrea, I'll never forgive you. I'll cut off all my financial support and disown you as my sister." The call abruptly ended after Valentine had finished venting his fury. Benita sat in disbelief, shocked by her brother's actions. She never expected him to defend a wife he wanted to divorce, let alone threaten her. "Benny, you should—" Benita shot her friend a sharp look before exploding in anger. "Both of you get out." Her friends were taken aback by her outburst, staring at her in disbelief. Benita was even more irritated by their facial expressions. Through gritted teeth, she repeated, "I said get out. Both of you, are you two deaf?" Despite sending her two girlfriends away, Benita still felt furious and sought to vent her anger. She instructed the manager to bring in Andrea Singers. When Andrea was brought in, she wore a fawning smile, showing no offense at being previously barred from entry. She even took the initiative to greet Benita. "Benny, you are looking pretty, and your shop has grown over the years. I am proud of you." Benita's arrogance only grew as she looked down at Andrea, dismissing her greeting. After instructing her to sit down, she asked coldly, "Andrea, why are you here?" Andrea fell to her knees, tears streaming down her face. She pleaded pathetically, "Benny, we've been friends since we were kids, and you know how much I love your brother. Can you talk to him? I don't want to divorce him." Benita's disdain for Andrea was already palpable. The words that escaped her lips only deepened her revulsion. She couldn't help but snort with contempt after a fleeting moment of laughter. "Andrea, have you even glanced in the mirror lately? If you had, you wouldn't be so insistent on continuing your marriage with my brother." Benita wasn't done mocking Andrea. She continued, "Andrea, there ought to be a limit to your greed. You're simply not suitable or deserving of my brother. It's time for you to make a bit of sacrifice and let go of your marriage to him." Perhaps due to mounting frustration or the impact of Benita's words, Andrea's laughter took on a manic edge, causing Benita to feel a twinge of unease. With a scoff, Andrea exclaimed, "Sacrifice?" Her tears, now flowing freely, seemed to form a torrent. "I provided the capital Valentine used to start Val Corp. I even resigned from my position as Secretary General of Wilson Group to personally assist him in building up the company. And your brother repaid me with a divorce. What more sacrifice could you possibly expect from me, apart from my very life?" Her voice thundered as she spoke these words. Benita calmly sipped her tea, seemingly unaffected by Andrea's emotional outburst. Setting her cup down, she inquired, "So what now, Andrea?" With a disdainful sneer, she continued, "Do you honestly think my brother would have chosen to marry you if you held no value? Do you still hold any worth? What gives you the right to continue being my brother's wife? Rose Ferguson is prepared to grant the Eastern Waterfall Project to my brother and invest $500 million into his company. Can you offer my brother anything comparable?" As Andrea listened to Benita, her hope and resolve waned. She rose unsteadily, not waiting to be dismissed, and staggered toward the exit, feeling like a balloon slowly deflating. Even after she left the store and into the streets, Andrea remained dazed and unable to collect her thoughts, her legs moving without conscious direction. She never thought a day like this would come, a day she would be told to her face that Valentine was divorcing her because of money. Andrea Singers was jolted awake by the sound of screeching tires and a shout, causing her to faint. When she regained consciousness, she found herself in a hospital bed, surrounded by faint voices that gradually became clearer as she became more alert. "Sir, you need to take better care of your wife," she heard someone say. "If not, she could lose the baby. She's been under a lot of stress and it's not good for the unborn child." Andrea sat up abruptly, locking eyes with the doctor in the lab coat, her expression filled with shock. "What did you just say?" she demanded. The doctor furrowed his brow but maintained his professional demeanor. "Madam, you need to prioritize your health," he advised. "You're already a mother. and it wouldn't be good to lose your first child. Andrea Singers couldn't believe her ears as the doctor spoke. With a face filled with disbelief, she mumbled, "How is that possible? I've never vomited or felt dizzy and never suffered any symptoms of pregnancy. It can't be." After muttering, she shook her head in denial. The doctor smiled and calmly replied, "The symptoms of pregnancy can vary. I believe your increased appetite may be due to your pregnancy, especially considering your weight." Andrea didn't wait for the doctor to finish. She swiftly got out of the hospital bed, ignoring the hospital gown. Without glancing at the two strangers standing quietly in the ward, she made her way to the exit. "Madame, where are you going?" the doctor called after her retreating figure, but all he heard in response was the creaking shut of the ward door. An uncomfortable silence filled the ward as Andrea Singers hurriedly left without acknowledging the handsome middle-aged man and his companion who brought her to the hospital. The doctor, wearing a doubtful expression, began, "Mr. Singers." But before he could finish what he wanted to say, the middle-aged man interjected, "Thank you for looking after my wife." The doctor nodded, his eyebrows furrowed in contemplation. Mr. Singers quickly departed the ward with his assistant. As they exited the ward, the scent of disinfectant assaulted their nostrils. "Mr. Singers, why didn't you correct the assumption of the doctor that the woman isn't your wife?" inquired his assistant. Mr. Singers responded calmly, his expression unreadable. "Tony, if she isn't already my wife, she will be. Investigate her for me. I want to know everything about her." Mr. Singers' assistant was dismayed by his boss's decision to marry a woman he considered unattractive and unworthy. "Boss, why her? She's not pretty, and she's carrying someone else's child. She's not fit to be Mrs. Singers," Tony protested. "Being Mrs. Singers isn't about good looks. Otherwise, I wouldn't have been single for 30 years, Tony." Mr. Singers replied calmly, his expression unreadable. Tony was left speechless by Mr. Singers' response and quickly went to carry out his assigned task. After leaving the hospital, Andrea Singers rushed to Val Corp and made her way to the president's office wearing a hospital gown. "Mrs. Andrea, you can't go in." Valentine Anderson's secretary tried to stop her from entering the president's office. Anxious and eager to share the news she had heard at the hospital, Andrea ignored the secretary's attempts to stop her. She rushed toward the president's door, but the secretary quickly grabbed her arm and pleaded, "Mrs. Andrea, please don't make things difficult for me. The president has given strict orders not to allow anyone in." Despite the slender secretary's efforts, Andrea, who weighed 200 pounds, pulled her towards the door, insisting emotionally, "I am here to see my husband. You can't stop me from seeing him." As Andrea pushed the door open, she was met with a shocking sight that left her frozen in place, her expression shifting from dark to pale. Her husband's trousers were down to his ankles as he stood behind a naked figure pinned to the office table, lost in their passionate sex. Neither of them noticed Andrea's presence. The lady pinned to the table eyes squinted as she moaned. When she noticed Andrea, a smug expression appeared on her face, and her moans grew louder with each thrust. "Spank my butts, baby," Rose Ferguson urged. Unable to bear the sight, Andrea turned away, tears falling to the marble floors. She left the office, passing by the secretary's desk with a heavy heart. "Mrs. Andrea," called Valentine Anderson's secretary. Andrea Singers, overwhelmed with sorrow, was unable to utter a single word or even register what the secretary was saying. Leaving Valcorp, she hailed a taxi and headed to a bar. Stepping out of the taxi, she entered the bar and promptly ordered a bottle of alcohol. Despite drinking glass after glass, she found herself unable to get tipsy. A scowl formed on Andrea's face. "Did Valentine instruct you not to serve me alcohol? Is he afraid of losing his unborn child?" She shouted at the top of her lungs in suspicion. I was the one who gave the order, a deep voice responded. Dignified Mr. Singers entered the bar with purposeful strides, drawing the attention of everyone present, particularly the women. He seemed to be the focal point of the bar. Walking over to where Andrea Singers sat, furrowing her eyebrows as she contemplated where she had met Mr. Singers, he shifted a chair and sat down in front of her. Who are you? Are you sent by Valentine? Tell him I won't keep this baby. Andrea Singers gritted her teeth in anger as she glared at Mr. Singers with animosity. Mr. Singers, with an expressionless face, responded in his deep, magnetic voice, "He isn't worthy. I'm here to marry you. Be my wife." Andrea Singer's eyes widened in shock at Mr. Singer's response. The shock on her face was like the difference between heaven and earth compared to the one on her face when she was informed of her pregnancy. The longer Andrea gazed at Mr. Singers, the more her expression turned incredulous, as if she were staring at a madman. With a dry laugh, she remarked, "How could someone as handsome as you marry someone as plain and overweight as me? Despite being older, you look nothing like your age, sir. Are you trying to make a mockery of me?" In response to Andrea's words, Mr. Singers replied calmly, "I mean every word. If you give the word, I will marry you and you will become Mrs. Singers, inheriting the Singers Group. You can seek retribution against your husband and his mistress and anyone who has caused you pain." The more Andrea listened to the exceptionally handsome man, the more she became convinced of her initial suspicion that he was indeed insane. Suddenly, Andrea stood up and fled without looking back. As she exited the bar, she patted her chest and took a deep breath, shaken by the encounter with the eccentric man. After hailing a taxi, she hurried back home, her heart filled with anticipation as she noticed the lights were on. Upon opening the front door, she was greeted by the sight of her husband, Valentine Anderson, waiting for her in the living room. As Valentine raised his head, their eyes locked, but instead of warmth, a look of disdain clouded his features. "Why haven't you signed the divorce papers?" he asked icily. The joy of seeing her husband waiting for her quickly dissipated for Andrea. She forced a bitter smile and replied, "I'm carrying our child, hubby. We're going to have a baby." A radiant smile spread across her face, only to vanish at Valentine's response. "Andrea, if you think a cheap lie will make me reconsider divorcing you, then you're mistaken. Even if you are pregnant, it won't change my decision," Valentine Anderson stated coldly, his disappointment evident on his face. He was very angry Andrea was trying to deceive him with a cheap lie. Andrea grew increasingly anxious and flustered as she explained, "I'm not lying, dear. I am really pregnant. I was taken to the hospital and the doctor confirmed it. My weight gain is because I'm pregnant." Valentine's expression darkened further as he listened, his patience wearing thin. Finally, he exploded with rage, his eyes flashing and his jaw clenched. "Enough!" Andrea shuddered in fear as her body trembled. Valentine Anderson shot a stern look at Andrea and said, "Andrea, if you continue to resist signing the divorce papers, I will have no choice but to take our case to court. You leave me no option." Andrea's heart sank. She couldn't believe Valentine was so determined to end their marriage. Tears welled up in her eyes as she reluctantly picked up the pen and signed the papers. Valentine felt a pang of discomfort as he watched her sign the divorce papers. Once Andrea was done, she stood up, turned away, and made her way toward the exit. Frowning, Valentine called after her, "Where are you going?" Andrea Singers halted in her tracks upon hearing Valentine's question, then turned to face him. "I am leaving, Valentine. You will regret divorcing me. There will come a day when you will plead for me to be your wife." Valentine scoffed at her words, dismissing the idea that such a day would ever come. Him begging an ugly meatball like Andrea to be his wife? Not a chance. Unmoved by Andrea's tears, Valentine made his way to the balcony and silently watched her departure. Outside the house, Andrea stood before the gate, gazing back at the house that had been her home for so many years, the house where she had envisioned raising her children. As she dwelled on these thoughts, her tears flowed more freely. Suddenly, thunder rumbled, lightning streaked across the sky, and it began to rain heavily. Andrea Singers trembled and sank to the ground, shivering and crying under the heavy downpour. Before she could lose consciousness, a car pulled over and a man rushed out, hurrying to her side. Mr. Singers lifted her from the ground while his assistant shielded them with an umbrella. Ignoring the rain, Mr. Singers carried Andrea to the waiting car, which quickly whisked them away from the gate to a grand mansion in the heart of the city. The entire household sprang into action as Mr. Singers, still drenched, carried Andrea inside and bellowed, "Summon Dr. Smith. He has 3 minutes to arrive if he values his life." The staff had always considered Mr. Singers to be a kind of distant, benevolent figure, uninvolved in worldly matters and seemingly uninterested in romantic entanglements. So when they saw him bringing in a woman, and a fatty at that, the entire mansion buzzed with gossip. As Mr. Singers laid Andrea Singers on the bed, his normally composed face was as dark as a gathering storm. When he emerged from the room, he encountered his assistant waiting at the door. "Mr. Singers, Dr. Smith has arrived. Should we have him attend to Mrs. Singers?" Tony, his assistant, inquired softly. He had never seen his boss so agitated and genuinely concerned about someone before. "Send him in, and then join me in the study," Mr. Singers replied tersely before turning and striding away. Once in the study, he lit a cigarette and began to smoke. A few minutes later, the door creaked open, and Tony, his assistant, entered. "Will she be angry if I kill him?" Mr. Singers asked, his voice deep and chilling, his aura suffocating with murderous intent. "Mr. Singers, she still cares for that man. I doubt she'll forgive you if she finds out. Besides, he's the father of her unborn child," Tony replied softly, casting a worried look at his boss as the room fell into an eerie silence. Mr. Singers chain-smoked, something Tony had never seen him do before, his face etched with concern. "Announce that I will be introducing my wife tomorrow at the bouquet," Mr. Singers finally instructed his assistant after finishing his 5th cigarette stick. As his assistant left to carry out the order, Mr. Singers remained in the study, lost in thought. He withdrew a photograph from his breast pocket and stared at it until dawn broke, before finally leaving the study room. Upon awakening in an unfamiliar room, Andrea Singers was seized by panic, her eyes darting fearfully around the space. As the door swung open, she was met by servers accompanied by Mr. Singers himself. "Please, don't be frightened. You're in my room. You must eat. You haven't had anything since yesterday," Mr. Singers reassured her in his resonant, calming voice, devoid of the turbulent emotions he had displayed the night before. The mention of food caused Andrea's stomach to growl, and she swallowed hard. She eagerly devoured the meal that was presented to her. Finishing every last bite, Andrea glanced down bashfully as Mr. Singers affectionately inquired, "Shall I have them bring more?" Flushed with embarrassment, Andrea murmured softly, "No," her voice barely audible. Mr. Singers chuckled and motioned for the kitchen to bring in more food. After Andrea Singers finished her meal, she overheard Mr. Singers make an unexpected proposal. "If you agree to marry me, I'll ensure you have all your favorite things, assist you in seeking revenge on your husband, and transfer ownership of the Singers Group and all my properties to you. You'll also be admired by women worldwide as Mrs. Singers." As Andrea processed his words, she realized that the meal she had just enjoyed had been tailored to her tastes. She gazed at Mr. Singers, bewildered. Tony entered the room and announced, "The necessary documents are ready." He handed the files to Mr. Singers. "Please review them and sign if you're satisfied," Mr. Singers instructed Andrea, passing her the stack of papers. In a daze, Andrea looked at him and asked, "Why me?" Mr. Singers let out a wistful sigh before replying, "Because you remind me of my daughter and my wife." Observing the furrowed brows and distant gaze of Mr. Singers, Andrea realized that her question had stirred up painful memories for him. "I'm sorry," she murmured, bowing her head apologetically. "If you truly regret it, then please demonstrate your sincerity by signing these papers," Mr. Singers suggested with a gentle smile. Andrea gazed at him intently for a moment before mustering the courage to ask, "Would you be willing to assist me in seeking revenge against those who have wronged me deeply?" Nervously clutching the pen in her hand, Andrea began signing the documents without hesitation the instant Mr. Singers gave a nod. Once she finished signing, Mr. Singers gently reminded her, "You didn't read the documents." "I have faith in you," Andrea replied resolutely. Mr. Singers was momentarily taken aback, his expression transforming into a subtle smile. "Mrs. Singers, I am going to introduce you to everyone as my wife. Are you ready?" Mr. Singers asked tentatively, his familiar quizzical expression on his face. Remembering the hurtful treatment she had endured from the Anderson family and the man she had once trusted, Andrea nodded resolutely and replied, "Yes." "Excellent," Mr. Singers exclaimed with delight as he discreetly pressed a button under the table in front of him. A few minutes later, the door slowly swung open, and the mansion's butler entered the room. A neatly groomed man with a slight slant to his eyes, dressed impeccably in a uniform paired with sneakers, appeared before them. He looked to be around 30 years old and greeted them with a respectful bow. "Prepare her for the grand event tonight. Make her the envy of Vegas and the most stunning bride in the world," Mr. Singers instructed gravely, his voice resonating with authority. "Mrs. Singers, please," the butler gestured politely as he invited Andrea to accompany him. Andrea hesitated, but when Mr. Singers nodded in her direction, she felt reassured and followed. She couldn't explain it, but she found herself placing unwavering trust in Mr. Singers. As soon as they exited the living room, Tony let out a rueful sigh. He couldn't comprehend why his boss was marrying a woman he considered unattractive. "Boss, are you sure about entrusting her with all your assets so hastily?" Tony asked, his expression filled with disbelief. Surprised by the question, Mr. Singers turned to Tony. "Do you wish to marry Andrea?" Tony's eyes widened in shock at the unexpected query. He hadn't anticipated such a question from his boss, especially while he was trying to understand the reasons behind Mr. Singer's quick decisions. "Certainly not. I'm not attracted to overweight women. My tastes are quite different, boss," Tony replied, shaking his head in refusal. Mr. Singers responded, "What a pity. One day you will regret your decisions today." Before leaving the room, Tony, startled by his boss's words, couldn't help but wonder if his boss had been bewitched by Andrea. How can he regret missing out on marrying a fat and ugly lady? Impossible. He shook his head and left the room also. The Singers Group made a big splash in the media with two major announcements. After being single for 40 years, Mr. Singers is set to introduce his new wife at the bouquet event, alongside unveiling the partner for the Singers Group's Vegas branch. The vibrant city of Vegas was abuzz with excitement over these revelations, particularly among the guests who were diligently preparing for the upcoming event. Among the invitees were Valentine Anderson and Rose Ferguson, who were spotted sharing a tender moment in their car outside the Singers' lavish mansion. Arriving just 10 minutes before the bouquet ceremony, Rose expressed her confidence to Valentine. "I promised you, Val, I'll secure the project for you and establish a partnership with the Singers Group." Valentine, beaming with gratitude, replied, I never once doubted you, Rose. Rose gently lifted his chin with 2 fingers before leaning in to kiss him, her voice commanding as she spoke. You made the right choice in divorcing that ugly, fat woman. With me by your side, all your dreams can come true. Remember, without me, you're nothing, Valentine. But with me, you can be everything you've ever wanted. With that, Rose released his chin, and they both stepped out of the car, their arms intertwined like a couple as they made their way into the bouquet hall. Their entrance didn't go unnoticed, drawing whispers and curious glances from the onlookers. Friends and acquaintances of Rose and Valentine approached them to strike up conversations. Valentine, where is Andrea Singers, your wife? Asked Mr. Aton, the executive director of Wilson Group, a man in his late 50s who had a close relationship with both Valentine and Andrea during her time working under him. He was intrigued by Andrea's absence and had always seen her as a daughter figure. Witnessing Valentine displaying public affection with another woman stirred up a wave of anger within Mr. Aton. Mr. Aton, since you're here, I want to make an announcement. Andrea and I are no longer married. We have finalized our divorce, Valentine declared loudly, his voice echoing across the spacious bouquet hall where everyone had gathered despite the event not having begun. Liar! You're a liar! Mr. Aton retorted furiously. He couldn't believe that Andrea, who deeply loved Valentine Anderson, would ever agree to a divorce. Watch your words, old man, Rose Ferguson said confidently. Valentine and I will be getting married next week, and you're invited. With that, she pecked Valentine on the cheek and affectionately grabbed his arm, further aggravating Mr. Aton. Valentine's expression darkened. He had no intention of marrying Rose the following week. As he opened his mouth to respond, a voice cut through the tension. Please take your seats, everyone. Mr. Singers has arrived, announced the event planner over the microphone. The guests promptly found their seats as they waited for Mr. Singers and his wife's arrival. Mr. Singers and Andrea entered the venue together. Upon seeing Andrea Valentine Anderson rise from his seat with a look of disbelief etched on his face, Valentine's expression turned to one of shock. In the grand ballroom, all the guests were seated except Valentine Anderson, whose eyes were fixed on Mr. Singers and Andrea. Andrea looked stunning in her elegant attire, with perfectly styled hair exuding glamour. Although not as radiant as she once was before gaining weight, her beauty still shone through. Please sit down, Valentine. Everyone is staring at you, Rose Ferguson whispered to him in embarrassment, gently pulling his arm. Feeling the weight of the collective gaze upon him, Valentine reluctantly took his seat. His discomfort and restlessness grew as he watched Andrea and Mr. Singers together. As Andrea held on to Mr. Singers' arm, the pair made their way towards the stage. Despite catching Valentine's sudden movement to stand up, she did not spare him a glance. The guests were taken aback to see Andrea with Mr. Singers. Knowing she was Valentine's ex-wife, a hush fell over the bouquet hall as they refrained from speaking out due to Mr. Singers' prominent status. Guiding Andrea to a seat on the podium, Mr. Singers stepped forward, seizing the microphone. I'm grateful for your presence here tonight. Allow me to introduce someone of immense significance to me. My world, my life, the reason I journeyed to Vegas, my daughter, my wife, my soul family, Andrea Singers. As Mr. Singers concluded his introduction, a resounding round of applause filled the bouquet hall. Valentine Anderson sat grim-faced as the crowd erupted in applause. Ignoring the celebratory atmosphere, he reached for a glass of liquor and downed it in one go. Pouring another drink, he raised it to his lips, only to have it snatched away by Rose Ferguson. Valentine, what are you thinking? Drowning your sorrows because your ex-wife is with a man old enough to be her father? Do you still love her? Rose scolded, her voice filled with concern. Valentine paused, unsure of his own feelings for Andrea. The sight of her with another man ignited a fierce jealousy within him, making it impossible to stay and watch any longer. Without a word, he rose from his seat and made his way towards the exit. "Valentine Anderson," Rose called after him, her voice tinged with frustration and disappointment. When Valentine Anderson continued to walk out of the bouquet hall without stopping, she pursued him in her high heels. The ensuing commotion between them interrupted Andrea's speech and diverted the guests' attention. Outside the hall, Valentine Anderson paced anxiously, his brows deeply furrowed. Rose grabbed his arm, turning him to face her before delivering a resounding slap to his cheek. "Valentine Anderson, why did you leave the hall just because you saw your unattractive ex-wife with someone much older? What do you think of me, Valentine Anderson?" Rose Ferguson demanded, her jaw clenched and face flushed with anger. Valentine Anderson fell silent, grappling with his emotions. "Rose, I can't continue like this. My heart still belongs to Andrea," he confessed, leaving Rose stunned. With that, he turned away, got into his car, and drove away from the singer's mansion. After circling the city for some time, Valentine Anderson eventually parked his car in a secluded corner. He closed his eyes, furrowing his brow as lines etched across his forehead. "Was Andrea telling the truth about being pregnant with my child?" he whispered to himself, his inner turmoil evident. "I still love her. I can't lose her." With a newfound resolve, Valentine started the engine and headed back to the singer's mansion. Upon his return to the bouquet hall, the announcements had already been made, and guests mingled in small groups engaged in light conversations. Scanning the room, Valentine's eyes settled on Andrea, who sat alone in a corner. As Mr. Singers excused himself to attend to other guests, Valentine seized the moment. He strode purposefully towards Andrea, gripping her arm firmly and leading her towards his waiting car. Andrea, snapping out of her shock, yelled at Valentine Anderson in a fit of anger. "Let go of me!" She fought and managed to free her arm from his grasp. Valentine ran his fingers through his hair, visibly frustrated as he stared at Andrea. "I'm sorry, Andrea. I don't know what came over me. I still love you. Please come back home with me. I haven't filed for divorce. We're still husband and wife." Valentine pleaded, trying to reach for Andrea's arms. But Andrea stepped back, evading his outstretched arms. She gazed at him with disbelief, realizing that Valentine was only acting this way because he saw that she had moved on happily. "Do you think you can just discard me like a piece of property and pick me up whenever you please?" Andrea asked, her voice laced with anger. "I'm sorry. Please, let's go home together," Valentine responded anxiously. Andrea's heart ached as memories of Valentine Anderson's disdainful treatment flooded back, breaking her heart without a second thought. As she turned to walk away, Valentine grabbed her arm, insisting, "You belong to me, Andrea. You're my wife, and I won't let you go. You're coming home with me." Mr. Singers intervened, his voice stern as he commanded, "Release her this instant, Valentine." Valentine's grip tightened as he glared at Mr. Singers, claiming, "She carries my child. She'll never love you. She loves me. She's my wife, and she's coming back with me." When Rose Ferguson witnessed the scene, a mix of embarrassment and rage surged through her. She rushed forward, her voice filled with hysteria. "Andrea, you shameless seductress, how dare you try to steal my fiancé after seducing a man old enough to be your father?" Valentine Anderson swiftly stepped in, preventing Rose from reaching Andrea, and issued a stern warning. "Do not lay a hand on my wife." Rose stood in shock at Valentine Anderson's words. In a moment of anger, she swiftly smacked him across the face and shouted, "You ungrateful scum! I was the one who helped shape who you are today, Valentine. Remember, I have the power to both elevate and destroy you. I can retract my support for the waterfall project and halt all the investments my father planned for your company." With that, Rose turned on her heel and walked away, leaving Valentine torn between Andrea Singers, who he is in love with, and Rose Ferguson, who could profoundly impact the future of his company. Realizing his earlier actions were driven by impulse, Valentine watched Rose's retreating figure and felt a pang of hesitation before finally deciding to chase after her. Tears welled up in Andrea's eyes as she watched the scene unfold. Mr. Singers, observing tears streaming down Andrea's face, approached her and enveloped her in a comforting embrace. "You don't have to be strong. It's okay to cry or scream if you need to. Don't suppress your emotions," he advised gently. As soon as he finished speaking, Andrea clung to him tightly, releasing her pent-up emotions in sobs. However, Mr. Singer's expression turned stern, his features hardening as he furrowed his brow. After letting out her feelings, Andrea pulled back from the hug, wiped away her tears hastily, and realized that Mr. Singers was now her husband. She couldn't afford to dwell on her ex-husband's memory in his presence. "I'm sorry," she murmured apologetically, attempting to dry her tear-streaked face. "I understand what you're going through," Mr. Singers replied, calmly, handing her his handkerchief. "Wipe your tears," he instructed gently. Andrea lifted her gaze, her expression filled with uncertainty as she regarded him. How could there exist a man like him in this world? A man who didn't react with anger when his wife cried over another man? "I'm not like that scum you once called a husband," Mr. Singers asserted in a deep, resolute voice as he gently brushed away the tears from Andrea's face with his handkerchief. "A man like that doesn't deserve you," he continued. Andrea nodded, reflecting on the countless sacrifices she had made, including giving up her job at Wilson's Group to support him at Val Corp. "Andrea," a voice called out. Both Andrea and Mr. Singers turned to see Mr. Aton approaching them. Mr. Aton's expression darkened at the sight of Andrea's reddened eyes and flushed cheeks, realizing she had been crying. His gaze turned accusingly towards Mr. Singers. "Mr. Singers, as one of the wealthiest men in the world, why have you chosen her? Do you take pleasure in causing Andrea pain?" Mr. Aton mistakenly believed that Mr. Singers had been the one to upset Andrea. Before Andrea could speak, Mr. Singers interjected, "I promise I will never let her cry like this again. I will always keep her happy. I would rather die than see her shed tears." His solemn oath surprised Mr. Aton and Andrea. Mr. Aton gazed at Mr. Singers intently before remarking, "Mr. Singers, there may not be much I can do to you. Andrea is like my daughter. I trust you to uphold your promise. She has endured too much at her young age." A chill settled over Mr. Singer's face as he processed Mr. Aton's words. "Excuse me," he replied, before turning on his heel and walking away, leaving Mr. Aton and Andrea exchanging puzzled glances. After leaving Andrea and Mr. Aton, Mr. Singers retreated to his study with Tony. "Have you arranged the visas?" he inquired. "Yes, boss. The flight is scheduled for tomorrow evening," Tony confirmed with a nod. Mr. Singers sat in contemplation, his face devoid of expression as he delved into his thoughts. Tony, who had been at his boss's side for a decade, found it impossible to decipher Mr. Singer's inscrutable thought process. In a deep voice, Mr. Singers issued his directive to Tony, his trusted associate. "Ensure that Valentine Anderson suffers, but do not end his life. Make him believe that he will never be able to have children." Tony, perplexed by the unusual order, furrowed his brow in thought. He couldn't understand why his boss, who had been insulted by Valentine and had made his wife upset, chose not to seek a more severe retribution. Had Mr. Singer's temperament changed? "I will take care of it immediately," Tony replied before swiftly leaving the study. Valentine Anderson, unaware of the unfolding plot, departed Singer's mansion and proceeded to Rose Ferguson's residence. However, upon arrival, he was barred from entering the premises. Standing at the gate, he called out desperately, "Rose, I apologize for my inexplicable behavior. I love you, Rose. Please forgive me. Sir, please refrain from causing a scene. I cannot allow you entry, and your commotion may necessitate involving the authorities," the frustrated gatekeeper cautioned Valentine Anderson. The last few minutes had been incredibly trying for the gatekeeper, as he found himself caught between Rose Ferguson's directive to keep her lover out and Valentine's unwavering determination to reach her. "Rose, I know you can hear me. I deeply regret my actions. Please, let me make things right," Valentine continued to shout, heedless of the gatekeeper's warnings. The gate creaked open, and Rose Ferguson emerged from the mansion in her nightie. As Valentine Anderson's eyes landed on her, a spark of joy ignited within him. He eagerly approached her and said, "Rose, I deeply regret my actions. Can you find it in your heart to forgive me this once?" Rose furrowed her brow as Valentine moved closer. Anticipating his advance, she extended her arm to halt him and cautioned, "Stay right there." With a disdainful look, she continued, "Valentine Anderson, I have 3 questions for you and I expect honest answers." Without seeking his approval, Rose pressed on, "Do you truly love me, or is your heart with Andrea Singers?" Valentine's expression shifted dramatically. After inhaling sharply, he replied, "I love you, Rose Ferguson." Her arms folded across her chest, Rose posed her next question with narrowed eyes. "Did you divorce Andrea Singers because you found her unattractive and overweight?" Valentine Anderson's body tensed as he grasped Rose Ferguson's underlying motive behind her probing questions. "Yes," he replied, his voice barely above a whisper. A smug smile played on Rose's lips as she delivered her next demand with chilling composure. "Get on your knees and proclaim your love for me twice," she instructed. Valentine's eyes widened in disbelief at her audacious request. "Rose," he began tentatively. "If you can't do as I ask, then we're done," Rose stated coldly, her tone leaving no room for negotiation. Summoning his courage, Valentine took a deep breath, knelt, and declared twice, "I love you, Rose Ferguson." Rose Ferguson's lips curled up in satisfaction as she held Valentine Anderson wrapped around her fingers. Despite her sense of triumph, she maintained a stern posture, arms crossed just below her chest, fixing a disapproving gaze on Valentine. "You need to make a choice, Val. If you're with me, I won't tolerate thoughts of other women. I can't share you," Rose declared firmly. Valentine Anderson drew in a deep breath, his expression serious as he responded, "Rose, you are the only woman I will ever love. I won't entertain thoughts of anyone else." Locking eyes with Valentine, Rose spoke with intensity. "If that's truly how you feel, then you must confront Andrea Singers. Tell her she's unattractive, overweight, and unworthy of you. Make it clear that you regret ever marrying with her." Valentine. Anderson's expression darkened as he listened to Rose Ferguson's demands. Despite agreeing to her conditions out of a sense of duty and the many sacrifices he had already made, he was not foolish enough to openly say such a thing in front of Andrea Singers. He had already hurt Andrea enough, and he was determined not to worsen the situation. "Rose, I don't believe that would be wise. Andrea and I belong to the past. You and I are moving towards the future. Let's leave it at that," he said calmly. Rose's eyes filled with anger. "You still love her. Leave and never come back. I never want to see you again." With those words, she stormed back into the mansion, leaving Valentine feeling a sense of panic and regret. As he moved to follow her, he was stopped in his tracks by the gateman, who blocked his path with a stern warning. "You are not allowed to enter," the gateman declared firmly, preventing Valentine from pursuing Rose further into the mansion. In a fit of frustration, Valentine Anderson clutched at his hair, his mind consumed with the weight of his sacrifices. A once wonderful marriage, his dignity, all laid on the line for the contracts and the crucial support of the Ferguson family. With everything at stake, he knew he couldn't afford to risk losing it all. Taking a deep breath, he made a decision. "Fine, Rose. I'll do it," Valentine bellowed. Waiting in vain at the imposing gates of the mansion for a response that never came, he eventually retreated to his car and drove home. Arriving at his front door, he reached out to twist the doorknob only to find it locked. A wave of disorientation washed over him. He was accustomed to simply walking in. Patting his pockets in a futile search, he realized his house keys lay forgotten in the car. With a resigned sigh, he trudged back to his vehicle to retrieve them, returning to the door with the means to unlock it. After opening the door, he flicked on the light and sank into the chair, feeling exhausted. He knitted his brows in contemplation and instinctively called out, "Andrea, I'm home. Are you in the kitchen?" Silence greeted him instead of her familiar voice, making him realize that Andrea Singers was no longer his wife. Accustomed to her warm welcome no matter the hour, he sighed in disappointment before pushing himself up from the chair. Apart from downing 2 glasses of liquor, he hadn't touched a morsel of food all evening. With a frustrated grumble, he headed to the kitchen to scrounge up a meal, only to find the refrigerator and pots bare. After a resigned sigh, he settled for a packet of noodles and eggs. Lost in thought, he gazed at the gas cooker, contemplating. Inexperienced in the culinary arts, he embarked on his inaugural cooking venture. Switching on the flame, he nonchalantly added 2 glasses of water to the pot. Disregarding the need for boiling, he cracked open the eggs directly into the water. Hastily tearing open the noodle packets, he tossed them in, then settled on the floor against the kitchen cabinet, awaiting the noodles' readiness. As drowsiness overcame him, he drifted into sleep, unconsciously letting out snores. Unnoticed to Valentine Anderson, a dense steam billowed from the pot as the noodles cooked on. His slumber was interrupted by a pungent odor of burning food, jolting him awake. Wide-eyed, he leaped to his feet, only to find the pot ablaze after neglecting it for a daunting hour. Turning off the gas, he grabbed a cloth and lifted the pot from the burner, discarding the lid. A pungent odor of burnt food and smoke overwhelmed him, causing him to cough as if he were being strangled. Running his hand through his hair in frustration, he discovered that all the noodles in the pot had turned black from being charred. With a rueful sigh, he exited the kitchen and retreated to the bedroom, succumbing to sleep to quell his hunger. The following morning, he awoke early, his stomach growling with hunger, just as his phone started ringing. Glancing at the caller ID, his expression hardened, but he reluctantly answered the call. "Val, if you've completed the task I assigned you last night, come to my office so we can finalize the contract." Rose Ferguson's voice crackled through the phone's speaker. "All right," Valentine Anderson replied before ending the call, yawning and stretching as he prepared to face the day. After finishing his bath, he headed straight to grab breakfast. Before embarking on a day-long drive through the city to contemplate his next move, his phone incessantly rang with a call from Rose Ferguson, yet he deliberately ignored it. Arriving at Mr. Singer's mansion, he parked his car by the curb and fixed his gaze intently on the imposing structure. Motionless for an hour, deep in thought, he finally stepped out of the car and strode towards the gate, where he pressed the buzzer. The gate creaked open, and the gateman emerged. "Whom are you here to see, sir?" inquired the gateman. "I'm here to meet Andrea Singers," replied Valentine Anderson, secretly hoping for a refusal to provide him with an excuse to fail the task assigned by Rose Ferguson. "Sir, Mrs. and Mr. Singers departed the mansion an hour ago. They are on their way to catch a flight out of the country, informed the gateman. Valentine Anderson gazed incredulously at the gatekeeper, his expression twisted with disbelief. Disregarding the warning, he took a hesitant step forward towards the singer's mansion, his demeanor fraught with anxiety. "This is private property, sir. You can't enter," the gatekeeper cautioned firmly, adamant about not letting Valentine pass through the gates. Fueled by emotions and disbelief, Valentine's eyes blazed with intensity as he bellowed, "Move aside!" His mind was clouded with the shocking revelation about Andrea Singers not being in Vegas, causing him to act recklessly. Ignoring the gatekeeper's protests, Valentine forcefully pushed him aside and bolted towards the mansion. "Sir," the gatekeeper called out, struggling to rise to his feet and stop Valentine, who was sprinting towards the mansion entrance. "Andrea, where are you? Andrea!" Valentine's voice echoed as he neared the imposing mansion structure. However, his desperate cries were cut short as three imposing bodyguards swiftly emerged from the mansion, blocking his path and preventing him from entering. Valentine Anderson called out, "Andrea," once more, trying to push past the three imposing bodyguards blocking his way. Despite his efforts, he was overpowered and denied entry. "Please, let me through. I need to see if Andrea's here," Valentine pleaded urgently with the guards, his voice filled with anxiety. Looking up, he shouted, "Andrea, I'm sorry. Please don't go. If you're inside, please let me know. Don't leave." The three sturdy bodyguards exchanged confused glances, unsure of who Andrea was. Realizing their misunderstanding, one of them addressed Valentine. "I'm sorry, sir. Mrs. Andrea Singers has left the city with our boss." Valentine froze, his disbelief evident. Despite causing a commotion inside the mansion, Andrea did not appear. The bodyguards who emerged from the house confirmed what the gatekeeper had said. If Valentine refused to accept the truth, he would only be deceiving himself. Valentine Anderson's anguished cry of "Andrea" echoed through the mansion as he bolted outside. Without hesitation, he dashed across the street and slid into his parked car, tears streaming down his face as he gripped the steering wheel. The engine roared to life as the car shot forward, Valentine driving with reckless abandon, his mind consumed by thoughts of Andrea. "Andrea, please don't go. I still love you," he whispered in a voice heavy with desperation. Memories flooded his mind of their college graduation, Andrea's stellar achievements, her swift career success at Wilson Group, and her unwavering support as he founded Val. Corp regret washed over him like a tidal wave as he acknowledged his recent foolish behavior. "I've been a fool, Andrea. I'm sorry for everything," Valentine murmured, the weight of his mistakes pressing heavily upon him. As Valentine turned the steering wheel, guiding his car around the corner, another vehicle suddenly raced towards him from a nearby intersection. The screech of tires echoed through the air as the two cars collided with a deafening crash. Several meters away, Tony observed the unfolding chaos from a corner, a phone pressed to his ear. "It's been handled, boss," he reported before ending the call and quietly slipping away. Not long after, the wail of sirens announced the arrival of an ambulance at the accident site. Valentine Anderson, covered in blood and barely conscious, was rescued from his wrecked car. As he started to regain awareness, he weakly mumbled, "Andrea, please take me to the airport." He was swiftly placed on a stretcher and transported into an ambulance where immediate first aid was administered. Upon arrival at the hospital, he was rushed into the emergency ward. After a few hours, he was transferred to a room, his body tightly wrapped in bandages. Throughout the night, Valentine continued to murmur, "Andrea, don't leave me. Take me to the airport," before slipping into a deep slumber. The following morning, Rose Ferguson received news of Valentine's accident and hastened to the hospital. Upon seeing him, she noticed some bandages had been removed from his face and body, but his legs remained tightly wrapped. "Oh my goodness, what happened to you, my love?" Rose gasped in shock as she hurried to his bedside. Sitting down beside him, she gazed at him with profound concern. Valentine's lips trembled as he weakly called out to Rose. A few moments later, the doctor entered the ward and, upon seeing Rose Ferguson, was momentarily taken aback before inquiring, "Hello, miss, are you a family member?" Rose nodded firmly and replied, "I am his fiancé. How is he doing?" With a somber expression, the doctor replied, "His legs will heal in time, but he won't regain his sexual function or be able to father children." Rose's shock turned into a disbelieving laugh. "You must be joking," she said. The doctor's expression remained grave. "I wish I were. He will need your unwavering support during his recovery." Just then, the ward door swung open and Mrs. Anderson and Benita, Valentine's mother and sister, rushed in, their faces etched with worry. "Valentine, my child," Mrs. Anderson said, bursting into tears as she laid eyes on her injured child. "Brother," Benita cried out, equally distraught, rushing to Valentine's side upon hearing about the accident. Rose Ferguson's expression darkened as she observed Valentine's condition and his family's distress. She quickly made a decision and headed for the exit. "Where are you going, Rose?" Mrs. Anderson called out, noticing her movement. Stopping at the ward door, Rose turned to face Mrs. Anderson and Benita. With a cold demeanor, she remarked, "Is your son the one who was in the accident? That doesn't concern me. I cannot be expected to marry a potentially impotent man. I will take my leave now." Mrs. Anderson's eyes widened in shock as Rose Ferguson swiftly exited the ward after their conversation ended. "Mom, you should call Andrea," Benita suggested, surprised by Rose Ferguson's abrupt departure just when her brother needed support the most. Tears streamed down Valentine Anderson's face as he lay on the hospital bed. When he finally found his voice, he whispered to Benita, "Andrea is gone. She's gone." As he spoke, he squeezed his eyes shut, but the tears continued to flow. Mrs. Anderson and Benita looked at him in silence, feeling helpless and guilty for their part in the turmoil that had engulfed Valentine's marriage. Unaware of Valentine's accident, Andrea was far away from Vegas, having left with Mr. Singers some time ago. As they stepped off Mr. Singer's private plane at Sunshine Airport, Andrea was taken aback by the impressive fleet of cars that had come to greet her. The sheer number of luxury vehicles made her realize the extent of Mr. Singer's wealth, leaving her feeling a mix of awe and unease. "Are you regretting marrying me?" Mr. Singers teased with a wide smile. Andrea shook her head in response, remaining silent. Mr. Singers chuckled before reassuring her, "You don't need to feel nervous. Everything that is mine is now yours. You have no one to impress here. In fact, others will be vying for your attention. As a Singers, you hold the power in this city." Observing Mr. Singers, Andrea couldn't shake the feeling that he spoke and acted more like a father figure than a husband, likely due to their age difference. As they boarded one of the cars in the convoy, they left the airport with the entire city's traffic cleared for their passage. In Sunshine City, Mr. Singers reigned as the supreme authority, holding sway over the city's economy and government, particularly with his 80% ownership of the seaport. The convoy headed towards the eastern part of the city before veering off and arriving at the grandest villa in Sunshine City. Stepping out of the vehicle, a look of displeasure crossed Mr. Singer's face as he surveyed the vast mansion. The anticipated reception he had expected did not materialize, prompting him to issue an order that was conspicuously absent. Housekeeper Wynne gathered the maids employed at the mansion to greet Mr. Singers. Wynne, Were my instructions relayed as I directed? Mr. Singers inquired, a semblance of a smile not reaching his eyes, his voice resonating with authority. Housekeeper. Wynne quivered in trepidation. While Mr. Singers may seem approachable to some, he was a figure no one in Sunshine City would dare defy. Sir, I did not receive your instructions. Miss Agatha has been here for several days, and she made no mention of such a directive, Housekeeper Wynne replied, her legs shaking and her lips quivering. Mr. Singer's face twisted into a frown upon hearing Housekeeper Wynne's words. Agatha, his chief of staff, managed his daily schedule. He had left her at Sunshine City to oversee his companies, liaise with his associates both abroad and domestically. Turning away, Mr. Singers opened the car door for Andrea and assisted her in stepping out. Housekeeper Wynne, please take her belongings to the master bedroom, he instructed before leading Andrea into the living room. Agatha, perched elegantly on a chair in the living room, absent-mindedly swirled a glass of wine in her hand. Her expression was icy, betraying her inner discontent. As Mr. Singers escorted Andrea into the room, his demeanor shifted. With a forced smile, he directed Andrea to seek assistance from Vera, the maid, for anything she required. Andrea, ever compliant, nodded and exited the room with Vera. In the wake of their departure, Mr. Singer's smile vanished, replaced by an air of sternness. "Follow me to my study," he commanded coldly before striding off. Agatha's heart skipped a beat as fear gripped her. She had never witnessed Mr. Singers in such a steely mood. Setting down her glass of wine, she trailed behind him, her mind racing with unease. As Agatha followed Mr. Singers into the study room, she felt a sudden force against her, pinning her to the wall. Mr. Singer's bloodshot eyes bore into her, his grip tightening around her throat and making it hard for her to breathe. Releasing her abruptly, he took a step back, wiping his fingers with a tissue, before speaking in a chilling tone. "This must not happen again. Should you fail to heed my instructions next time, your life will not suffice to quell my fury." Struggling to catch her breath, Agatha gazed at him with teary eyes and managed to ask, "Why?" Mr. Singers, visibly irritated, furrowed his brows. He despised having to justify his actions to anyone. "Obedience is all that is required," he replied icily. As Agatha slowly regained her composure, tears streaming down her face, she questioned, "Is she more beautiful than me? I have served you for 2 decades. Don't I deserve your favor more than a stranger? Why choose her over me?" Mr. Singer's expression darkened, his eyes narrowing as he retorted, "You're simply an employee I pay. Must I justify myself to you? Agatha, it's time you found a boyfriend for yourself. If you continue down this path, any chance of us being together will be impossible." With those words, Mr. Singers strode towards the door and departed, leaving Agatha standing there with a pallid face, tears streaming down her cheeks as she began to cry. Her fists clenched tightly, she wiped her tear-stained face with the back of her hand. Having worked for Mr. Singers for years, she had harbored the hope of one day becoming Mrs. Singers. "If I can't have you, no one else will. You belong to me, Singers," Agatha vowed, her expression filled with resolve. Unaware of her thoughts, Mr. Singers made his way to the master bedroom where he had instructed the maid to take Andrea Singers. Upon entering the room, he found Andrea gazing out the window. "Do you like those flowers?" he inquired. Andrea didn't need to glance at the door to identify the speaker. She replied in a hushed tone, "Yes, they remind me of my mother. She adores planting them. When we left our old home due to the debts my father left behind, she still insisted on planting them. I once asked her why she planted those flowers, and she told me it reminded her of my father, whom I never got to meet." Had Andrea turned around at that instant, she would have caught the guilty expression etched on Mr. Singer's face. Andrea continued speaking, her voice filled with pain and longing. "When I was just 3 years old, my father left us and he never returned. I doubt I would even recognize him if he showed up now. Every evening, my mom would stand by the door hoping against hope that he would come back, but he never did." The expression on Mr. Singer's face changed dramatically, a mix of guilt, sorrow, and regret washing over him. "My mom always believed that my dad would return one day, but he never did, not even when she fell ill. I was in 6th grade at that time, juggling 2 jobs after school to try to pay her hospital bills." Andrea's voice broke, tears streaming down her face. Mr. Singer's eyes were red, and his fists clenched tightly, mirroring Andrea's pain. Wiping away her tears, Andrea turned away from the window to face Mr. Singer. During her funeral, he was nowhere to be found. I envied those who had fathers, who could take them to school, spend time with them, and create memories together. His absence at her funeral shattered any hope I had left of ever having a father. Turning back to the window, Andrea composed herself, then turned to Mr. Singer with a sad smile. "I'm sorry for burdening you with my past. I couldn't help it after seeing those flowers." Mr. Singer managed a strained smile and asked hesitantly, "Should I remove the flowers?" Shaking her head, Andrea replied softly, "No, they're beautiful. They remind me of my mother." A heavy silence fell between them, neither speaking for what felt like an eternity. Mr. Singer struggled to find the right words, his inner turmoil evident. Get ready. We're going shopping," Mr. Singer finally said, before leaving the room abruptly. As he exited, the tears he had been holding back finally spilled over, and he hurriedly retreated to another room, locking the door behind him. Sinking to the floor, he pulled out a photo from his pocket, tears streaming down his face. "Gwen, I'm so sorry. I failed you and our daughter. I wish I could undo my mistakes. I wish I never left," Mr. Singer whispered, his voice filled with remorse as he tried to wipe away the tears. The elites of Sunshine City would be astounded if they witnessed the scene. The most influential man in the city overcome with emotion, tears streaming down his face as he gazed at a photograph. The idea of such vulnerability from him would be unimaginable to them. A sudden knock on the door startled Mr. Singers, prompting him to hastily compose himself and answer it. Agatha stood there, looking grave as she delivered the message. "Mr. Singers, the chairman of Power Group wishes to see you urgently," she informed him. "Clear my schedule for today. I cannot meet anyone. If it's crucial, send someone in my place," Mr. Singers instructed, his face impassive. Agatha's expression darkened as she protested. "But sir, the meeting with Power Group is of utmost importance. It concerns the—" "Agatha, who is in charge here? You or me?" Mr. Singers interjected sharply, silencing her. Agatha hesitated, then fell silent, understanding his resolve. "I will make sure no one disturbs you today," she finally conceded. "I will not be seeing anyone today," Mr. Singers declared coldly before striding away. He promptly left the mansion with Andrea once she was ready. Agatha watched them leave the mansion, her expression filled with anger. The Mr. Singers she knew was a man consumed by his work, often foregoing meals to complete his tasks. However, since his return from Vegas, he had transformed into a different person, caring only about a woman he had brought back with him, who paled in comparison to Agatha's own beauty. A glint of determination shone in Agatha's eyes as she turned to housekeeper Wynne and inquired, "Wynne, do you have any idea where they are headed?" "I'm afraid I don't, Miss Agatha," housekeeper Wynne replied. Agatha couldn't shake off her surprise that Mr. Singers had failed to involve them in the report on the mansion's activities during his absence, a practice he usually followed. "Housekeeper Wynne, Do you believe this woman is a positive influence on Mr. Singers? Consider this: since his return, he has neglected his work for her. If this continues, we stand to lose numerous deals we've worked tirelessly to secure over the years," Agatha remarked before swiftly leaving the room, dialing a number on her phone as she went. Housekeeper. Wynn's expression turned grave. While Mr. Singers was her employer, he was also like family to them all, treating his employees with kindness and respect. Unaware of the concerns of those around him, Mr. Singers escorted Andrea to the city's premier shopping mall, housing the world's top brands. "Choose whatever you like without hesitation," Mr. Singers urged Andrea. Feeling overwhelmed by the lavish treatment, Andrea, who deemed herself unattractive and overweight compared to Mr. Singers, questioned his motives. "Why are you being so kind to me, Mr. Singers?" Andrea, whose perception of human nature was based on self-interest, asked. "Because you are a Singers. You deserve the best life has to offer. Let's find you the most exquisite gowns in the store," Mr. Singers replied, with a warm smile. Puzzled, Andrea furrowed her brow before inquiring, "Do you know my father?" Mr. Singers could discern Andrea's thoughts with a single glance. He gently cradled her face in his hands and spoke softly. "Andrea, not everyone who shows kindness to you has ulterior motives. You deserve genuine happiness." Andrea nodded instinctively, feeling a sense of trust in Mr. Singers that she had never experienced with the Andersons, who had exploited her and abandoned her when she no longer served their purposes. Hand in hand, they entered the bustling shopping mall, drawing surprised looks from onlookers. It was rare to see Mr. Singers publicly displaying affection, let alone holding a woman's hand. Rumors had circulated about his sexuality, but in that moment, it was clear that his connection with Andrea was something special. A voice of disapproval interrupted their moment. "I had imagined the type of woman who could capture your attention, but seeing this thing, I must say I'm disappointed in you." Mr. Singers turned around with a twisted grin that barely passed for a smile, his piercing gaze landing on a man in his early 70s. Despite his snow-white hair, the lines etched on his face seemed to defy his age, and he moved with a vigor that belied any need for assistance. Trailing behind him were two loyal aides. His name was Gibson. Prior to Mr. Singer's journey to Vegas, he had attempted to secure an alliance through marriage by introducing his most enchanting granddaughter to Mr. Singers. However, his proposal had been summarily rejected. "Apologize," Mr. Singers commanded icily, his usually stoic visage now clouded with darkness. Mr. Gibson stared back at Mr. Singers in disbelief. Despite their years of collaboration, this was the first time Mr. Singers had regarded him with such disdain, and all because of a woman whose appearance he found incredulous. "Why should I apologize?" Mr. Gibson retorted through gritted teeth, refusing to bow his head so that Mr. Singers could curry favor with an ugly woman. "I am terminating our $2 billion supply agreement and will also establish numerous supermarkets across the country, including beside yours. Furthermore, I am prepared to allocate $10 billion to acquire Hark Shark Corporation," Mr. Singers declared with a neutral expression, devoid of any hint of threat. Mr. Gibson's posture stiffened. He knew Mr. Singers always followed through on his statements. He vividly remembered a past incident where Mr. Singers had made a similar declaration to a prominent family in Sunshine City, and within 2 days that family had crumbled. "You are truly resolute. I apologize," Mr. Gibson conceded, swallowing his pride. He glanced at Andrea with a mix of anger and defeat before uttering, "I'm sorry," and promptly left, his face flushed with frustration and devoid of joy. Andrea gazed at Mr. Singers in astonishment, struggling to comprehend his words. She was incredulous that Mr. Singers was willing to endure billions in losses for her sake. "I spared him because you will need his help in the future," Mr. Singers responded anxiously, sensing Andrea's discontent with his decision. Upon hearing his words, Andrea snapped out of her reverie and hurriedly interjected. "No, not that. She paused, her lips tightly pursed, unable to articulate her thoughts. Locking eyes with her, Mr. Singers understood what she was trying to convey. "Andrea, your worth is not defined by your appearance. Those who fail to see your beauty are blind, and those who overlook your value are foolish. Do not let the opinions of the blind and foolish affect you." Tears welled up in Andrea's eyes. Since gaining weight unexpectedly, no one had spoken to her with such kindness. Her ex-husband Valentine and his family had treated her with disdain, leading to her spiraling into depression and losing her self-esteem. "Thank you," she whispered tearfully. Mr. Singers gently wiped away the tears on her face with his handkerchief, whispering, "Please don't cry. Let's not spoil your lovely face. Let's go inside." Taking her hand, they strolled into the bustling shopping mall. Mr. Singers guided her from store to store, picking out or helping her choose outfits, all of which bore prestigious brands and hefty price tags. He gallantly carried the bags of clothes as they approached the checkout counter, where the cashier was taken aback by their presence. "Hello, miss. You found yourself a good man. I wish I could be as fortunate as you," the cashier remarked sincerely, beaming at them. Andrea blushed and smiled modestly, while Mr. Singers draped his arm around her shoulder, declaring, "She deserves the world because she is the most extraordinary woman." The cashier grinned back and efficiently processed their purchases, handing over the bags as they left the mall together. As they journeyed back, Andrea gazed out of the car window only to realize they were veering away from his villa. She turned to Mr. Singers with a puzzled expression and inquired, "Where are we headed?" "It's a surprise," Mr. Singers replied, with a mysterious smile. Intrigued by his cryptic behavior, Andrea tried to press for more information but eventually gave up when she received no further clues. Upon reaching their destination, Andrea emerged from the vehicle to find herself standing before a towering office building that loomed over her, instilling a sense of inferiority and nervousness within her. The headquarters of the renowned Singers Group, a leading conglomerate in the country, was a testament to its power and status. The imposing structure was designed to showcase the group's prominence and influence in the nation. Despite the absence of visible security personnel, the sheer grandeur of the building was enough to dissuade any potential troublemakers. The Singers Group had a reputation for maintaining impeccable security standards, having never experienced any breaches or incidents of concern. Mr. Singers gently held Andrea's arms, his eyes brimming with affection as he whispered, "This will be yours in the future." Andrea was taken aback, her eyes widening in disbelief. She felt as though she must be dreaming, but a sharp pinch confirmed the reality of the moment. "No," she protested, recoiling from his words. Memories of past promises flooded her mind, promises of everlasting joy and a loving home from Valentine that had crumbled into heartache. The fear of being deceived once again gripped her as she took a step back, a desperate urge to flee rising within her. Before she could escape, Mr. Singers swiftly reached out, enveloping her in a tight embrace. "Don't be afraid. You're my family, my only family. This is meant for you and for your children," he reassured her, his hand gently patting her back. Overwhelmed by his words, Andrea's defenses crumbled, tears streaming down her face as she wept in Mr. Singers' comforting embrace. After regaining control of her emotions, Mrs. Singers took his time to guide Andrea through all the buildings in the Singers Group. The headquarters of the Singers Group was so vast that it wasn't until the entire afternoon had passed that they finished the tour. As Mr. Singers escorted Andrea to his office, one of his secretaries approached and informed him, "Mr. Singers, The board of directors and shareholders have requested your presence for an urgent meeting. Mr. Singers furrowed his eyebrows, caught off guard by the unexpected emergency meeting. It was evident that arrangements had been made without his knowledge. Andrea, come with me, Mr. Singers said, relieved that he wouldn't have to organize a meeting to introduce Andrea as their future chairman. Andrea tensed up, overwhelmed by the prospect of taking over the Singers group. Despite Mr. Singers' intentions, she doubted her ability to face the board of directors and shareholders. I'm not feeling well. Can we do this another time? Andrea's voice quivered, her complexion drained with anxiety evident in her fidgeting. Mr. Singers offered a reassuring smile as he gently took her hand. This is your company now. Your employees and colleagues should be the ones feeling nervous about meeting you. Remember, a boss is not meant to fear their employees. Don't be the first. Mr. Singer's words had a magical effect on her. Her stiffened back relaxed and her tense nerves eased. Taking her hand, Mr. Singer led her into the boardroom. As the door swung open, the fully occupied boardroom came into view, with the directors and shareholders seated around the large table. Mr. Singers entered with Andrea, leaving his secretary outside the room. Instead of taking his usual place at the head of the table, he gestured graciously for Andrea to occupy the main chair. In a mixture of shock and disbelief, the board members and shareholders nearly rose from their seats. They all knew that Mr. Singers had returned from Vegas with a fat woman, but they never expected her to be brought into the boardroom. Their respect for Mr. Singers' work ethic has always been unwavering, and his decisions and actions have consistently garnered full support. However, a boundary was drawn when it came to allowing a stranger into their boardroom. Chairman Singers, while we refrain from commenting on your personal affairs, the presence of your mistress in the boardroom raises questions. What does this signify? Inquired one of the shareholders, a long-standing member with a head of white hair, known for his blunt manner of speaking. She is not my mistress. Rather, she is my daughter, my wife, my family. She is poised to succeed me and lead the company into the future. I have full faith in her abilities, and I believe that under her guidance the Singers Group will flourish even more, Mr. Singers explained, with a hint of reverence in his voice. The board of directors and shareholders were taken aback by what they were hearing, wearing expressions of disbelief on their faces. Mr. Singers had single-handedly transformed the Singers Group from a mere idea into one of the nation's leading companies. The idea that such a monumental achievement could be surpassed by someone lacking in confidence seemed like a ludicrous notion to all present. Tensions were running high in the boardroom as the members directed their incredulous gazes towards Andrea, who sat with her head lowered throughout the discussion. Mr. Singers, we respect your judgment, but could you provide us with more information about her background and qualifications? We need to understand the basis for such a decision. After all, we can't appoint a janitor as our chairman simply on your say-so, can we? Inquired one shareholder in a somewhat lighter tone. Despite the attempt at levity, the atmosphere in the room was fraught with a palpable sense of unease, as if the group were collectively poised to pounce on Andrea or tear her apart. Mr. Singers responded, his eyes fixed on Andrea with a sense of satisfaction and admiration. She has served as an executive with the Wilson Group. Looking at Mr. Singer's expression, one might assume she had single-handedly saved the world. However, the board of directors and shareholders were not impressed. Despite the fact that only the most competent individuals were hired by the country's leading corporation, this did not automatically qualify someone to lead such a colossal business entity. A shareholder with a stern expression questioned Mr. Singers. Do you truly believe this is the right choice? How does she compare to Agatha? What credentials make her suitable to succeed you? He cast a disdainful glance in Andrea's direction. In a chilling tone, Mr. Singers replied, "She is Singers. For those who doubt her worthiness to succeed me, the door is open. You are free to leave, and I will not stand in your way." His words silenced the murmurs and discussions among the board of directors and shareholders. Minutes passed by, yet no one made a move to leave the boardroom. They sat there as still as obedient house cats. As the silence lingered, Mr. Singers surveyed the group before declaring, "It seems we have reached a unanimous decision for her to succeed me in the future. I assure you, you will not be disappointed with today's choices." After settling the matter, Mr. Singers realized he had not called for the meeting. "Now, may I inquire as to the reason for convening this emergency board meeting?" he asked, intrigued. The board members exchanged uneasy glances, unsure of how to broach the subject after such a display of authority. Finally, a shareholder cleared their throat and hesitantly replied, "We are still in deliberation." Mr. Singers nodded, his focus solely on Andrea. He gently guided her to her feet and personally introduced her to the shareholders and board directors. "Miss Andrea, I am excited about the prospect of collaborating with you," a shareholder expressed with a forced smile, masking any discontent he may have felt. In their rational mind, who would willingly part with their shares in the highly profitable Singers Group, which consistently generates daily profits and boasts an impressive annual turnover? The board of directors and shareholders were all on their best behavior during the introduction, thanks to the effective strategy employed by Mr. Singers. As soon as the introduction concluded, Mr. Singers departed with Andrea, leaving the boardroom behind. Once Mr. Singers and Andrea had left, the expressions of the board of directors and shareholders changed drastically. Their smiles disappeared, replaced by looks of anger as they engaged in intense discussions. Even after they had exited the boardroom, Andrea remained in a daze. Everything was happening too quickly, and she struggled to comprehend how she had suddenly been named as the successor of the Singers Group. Gazing at Mr. Singers, she gathered the courage to ask him the burning question that troubled her. "Why are you being so kind to me? Can you please tell me the truth?" Tears welled up in her eyes as she grappled with the overwhelming realization that someone outside of her family could show her such kindness. Did she have a long-lost brother she was unaware of? Mr. Singers took his time, gently brushing away the tears that trickled down Andrea's face. His gaze was filled with deep love as he spoke each word slowly. "I can't tell you now. I fear that you may come to despise me. Please do not worry. The time will come when I will reveal everything to you." Andrea, captivated by Mr. Singer's words, gazed at him in bewilderment. She couldn't comprehend why he was concealing their relationship from her. Why would she feel animosity towards him if he disclosed the truth? "Are you my father?" Andrea inquired, her brow furrowed with curiosity. Mr. Singers responded with a gentle smile, evading her question. "I will disclose my identity to you in due time." Taking her hand, he guided her towards his office, the grandest one within the Singers Group company. The room was adorned with a bookshelf in one corner, a notice board, a sleek desk, and the atmosphere was filled with freshness from the flowers adorning the space. Adjacent to the main office area was a private room door. Andrea, despite working for the prestigious Wilson Group, had never encountered an office as beautifully decorated as Mr. Singer's office. What caught her eye, however, was a baby frame hanging on the wall. As her gaze lingered on the enlarged photograph, Mr. Singers spoke softly. "That's a picture of my daughter. Whenever I'm having a rough day or need inspiration, I look at it, and everything seems to fall into place." Without a word, Andrea continued to study the photo, finding it strangely familiar yet unable to place it. She remembered the time they were evicted from their home when she was just 4 years old. her mother unable to take any belongings with them. After finally repaying the loan, their possessions were gone, including any pictures of her father or from her childhood. "Please have a seat. I'll get you some water," Mr. Singer said, mindful of Andrea's pregnancy. Andrea withdrew her gaze from the framed photo and fixed a piercing stare on Mr. Singer's, but ultimately chose not to voice the question burning in her mind. She settled into a chair and accepted the glass of water offered by Mr. Singer's. As she sipped the water, the office door swung open and Agatha entered. Catching sight of Andrea seated in the office, she froze in astonishment. "What's wrong?" Mr. Singers inquired, his tone tinged with impatience. Agatha shook off her shock and responded in a composed manner, her face betraying no emotion. "Mr. Singers, today marks the Arnold bouquet event. I brought a reminder letter from the Arnold family." Advancing, Agatha placed the letter on the table, but Mr. Singers remained fixated on Andrea, not sparing a glance at the reminder. Agatha seethed with anger at this display, rooted to the spot as she glared hatefully at Andrea. "Is there anything else?" Mr. Singers inquired with curiosity as he turned to Agatha. "No," Agatha replied, before stepping backward and leaving the office. Mr. Singers then turned to Andrea with a smile and asked, "Honey, will you accompany me as my +1? Andrea felt a wave of tension wash over her. It was evident that she was unwelcome in Sunshine City, having become a public enemy for her association with Mr. Singers. "I'm afraid I can't go," Andrea responded, her voice betraying her reluctance. "What a shame. In that case, I won't attend either," Mr. Singers remarked. Andrea looked up, her eyes widening in surprise. With a sense of panic, she insisted, "You must go. It's crucial for your work. Very important." Having worked with the Wilson Group, Andrea understood the significance of attending dinner parties and events hosted by influential and prestigious personalities. "In that case, come along with me," Mr. Singer suggested, his smile widening. Andrea hesitated, her lips pursed tightly, but a smile flickered in her eyes as she nodded in agreement. After a brief rest in the office, Mr. Singers escorted Andrea to a renowned designer in Sunshine City. With a casual air and legs crossed, he patiently waited for Andrea to be prepared for the bouquet. Once she was ready, the duo made their way to the Sky Hotel, the most prestigious hotel in Sunshine City. Upon arrival, a red carpet had already been rolled out, and Mr. Singers escorted Andrea out of the vehicle. "Singers, where is Agatha?" A man approached with a smile the moment he spotted Mr. Singers. "Sylvester, this is my wife Andrea," Mr. Singers introduced with a smile. Sylvester paid little attention to Andrea, instead focusing his gaze on the car from which Mr. Singers had emerged. Sylvester, unafraid of Mr. Singer's wrath in Sunshine City, has arrived to challenge him. He remembers Agatha well, as he has experienced losses at the hands of both Mr. Singers and Agatha, events that have deeply affected him. "Muchachon, if you no longer value Agatha, why not entrust her to me?" "You are unworthy of her," Sylvester remarked, shaking his head. He believed that Mr. Singers had an affair with Agatha, his chief of staff, before abandoning her for another woman, a woman worse than Agatha. Mr. Singers found himself unable to end the conversation with Sylvester, his reluctance driven by his concern for Andrea. He was determined not to let anyone disparage her. "Even if I were to hand over Agatha to you, victory would still elude you. A defeated adversary remains defeated. Don't let me down in the future. At the very least, put up a respectable fight before succumbing to her," Mr. Singers remarked, his arm offering solace on Andrea's back. Though not explicitly stated, the implication was crystal clear. Sylvester's eyes widened in disbelief. The revelation that Mr. Singers was willing to pass his legacy to an unknown like Andrea left him reeling. He had always assumed that Agatha would succeed him, so this unexpected turn of events left him seething with anger. "Singers, you've lost your mind. This is sheer madness," he muttered involuntarily. Mr. Singers didn't linger to converse further. Instead, he grasped Andrea's hand and guided her along the red carpet. As they walked, he struck various poses for the camera crew. Initially nervous, Andrea found her confidence returning as Mr. Singers orchestrated their poses, prompting her to smile at the camera. "Great shot," remarked one of the photographers admirably. In the company of Mr. Singers, Andrea entered the Grand Bouquet Hall. The expansive space was lavishly decorated with exquisite lighting, impeccably arranged tables and chairs, and a tantalizing array of rare delicacies. When Mr. Singers entered the room with Andrea, Mr. Arnold, the celebrant, approached them with a smile and warmly shook Mr. Singers' hand. "Singers, I'm delighted to see you here. I was afraid you might be too busy for an old friend like me." "How could that be possible when I owe you a favor, Arnold?" Mr. Singers replied, casting a glance at Andrea. "Arnold, I'd like you to meet my wife, Andrea. She will be leading Singers Group in the future. I trust you to take care of her just as you've taken care of me." Arnold's smile faltered, knowing the rumors circulating about the woman Mr. Singers had brought with him from Vegas City. He hadn't realized she had such a hold over Mr. Singers to the point of overshadowing his years of dedication. "Certainly, I will," Mr. Arnold reluctantly agreed before turning towards a group of men. Mr. Singers gently held Andrea's hand and escorted her to where the affluent tycoons of Sunshine City were engaged in lively conversation, their laughter filling the air as they held glasses of wine. "Ladies and gentlemen, may I introduce Andrea, who will be leading the Singers Group in the future. I trust in your capable hands to guide and support her," Mr. Singers announced with a grave expression. The elite members of Sunshine City were taken aback by his words, their expressions stiffening in surprise. Although rumors had been circulating within their circles regarding this development, they had largely dismissed them until now. "Mr. Singers, if I may." A distinguished gentleman with white hair and a slight hunch spoke up, exuding an aura of well-earned wisdom. "Of course, Mr. Punk," Mr. Singers replied. Mr. Punk nodded, indicating a quiet corner for them to converse. "Please have a seat over there. I'll return shortly," Mr. Singers instructed Andrea patiently. Andrea, complying without protest, made her way to the chair and seated herself, her gaze fixed on Mr. Singers as he departed alongside Mr. Punk. Despite the Singers Group's prominent position in Sunshine City, they maintained numerous alliances with influential families, including the one led by Mr. Punk. Once they had exited, Andrea found herself irresistibly drawn to the fruit displayed on the table. Ever since becoming pregnant, her appetite had become insatiable. Starting with a bite, she quickly devoured the entire fruit, still feeling unsatisfied. Without hesitation, she cut herself a slice of cake and indulged, oblivious to the fact that she was being recorded. Unbeknownst to her, as she ate, the video had already found its way onto the internet with a derogatory title. "Are you a reincarnation of a hungry ghost or simply a glutton who values food over everything else?" a voice taunted. Startled, Andrea looked up to see a striking woman accompanied by 4 others, all dressed in exquisite and glamorous gowns. The lady at the front, with her striking beauty, unleashed a barrage of cruel words directed at Andrea. "Your cheeks are too chubby, your eyes barely visible, your stomach is fat, and you appear obese and unfit. Do you even think you deserve to be with Mr. Singer?" she taunted Andrea without mercy. Caught off guard, Andrea gazed at the lady, bewildered by the sudden attack. Little did she know that the lady before her was Mr. Gibson's granddaughter, who had been rejected by Mr. Singer. Anne, unable to accept her defeat to someone like Andrea, decided to stir up trouble in Mr. Singer's absence. As Andrea sat there, her face drained of color, she hung her head in shame, unable to respond. She faltered, at a loss for words. Anne regarded her with disdain, while her friends giggled wickedly in the background. "Waiter," Anne called out to a passing server. "Miss Anne, how may I assist you?" the waiter inquired upon arriving at their table. The waiters were all skilled professionals, adept at discerning guests' identities and needs and ensuring their satisfaction. Anne nodded towards Andrea. "She needs to use the restroom but doesn't know the way," she explained. Andrea was taken aback by Anne's words, her expression one of surprise. The waiter regarded Andrea skeptically, aware of her identity as Mr. Singer's +1. Noticing the waiter's hesitation, Anne remained composed. After a hearty meal, she's feeling a bit embarrassed about asking for directions to the restroom, she clarified. As the waiter glanced at the nearly empty table, he was convinced by Anne's explanation. "Mrs. Singer's this way," the waiter said, gesturing towards the restroom area. Andrea didn't question Anne's words due to her status. Andrea opened and closed her mouth, unable to utter a word. She felt too embarrassed to face Anne and her friends. Rising to her feet, she followed the waiter with her head bowed in shame. Meanwhile, Anne and her friends chuckled in amusement. "Anne, she went to the toilet. How embarrassing," one of them remarked. Another friend asked Anne, "What are you going to do to her?" Anne's smile appeared innocent, but a fierce glint flashed in her eyes as she replied, "What do you mean? She just went to use the toilet." Anne's friends exchanged knowing glances and smiled. Following the waiter to the restroom area, Andrea stopped at the doorway leading to the female restroom. The waiter said, "Mrs. Singer's, this way." "Thank you," Andrea responded in a nearly whispered voice before stepping inside. After the waiter departed, Andrea decided not to return immediately. Instead, she made her way into one of the restrooms and closed the door behind her. Gazing at her reflection in the mirror, Andrea's eyes welled up with tears, streaming down her cheeks without warning. She attempted to wipe them away with the back of her hands, but they continued to cascade down her face incessantly. Sniffling, she murmured to herself, "Being fat doesn't equate to being ugly. Being fat doesn't mean I am ugly." Repeating these words in an effort to bolster her self-assurance, Andrea took a deep breath and composed herself. Her expression hardened as she turned away from the mirror, resolved to exit the restroom. Reaching for the door handle, she twisted it, only to find it wouldn't budge. Panic surged through her as she frantically tried to force the door open, but her attempts proved futile. Pounding her palm against the door, she cried out, "Is anyone there? Can anyone hear me? Please, open the door." Unbeknownst to Andrea, the door had been locked by someone dispatched by Anne immediately after she had entered the restroom, and that individual had departed without a trace. Frantically searching herself, Andrea realized with a sinking feeling that she had left her phone and purse in the bouquet hall, a casualty of her nervousness and embarrassment. "Please, open the door. I'm begging you," she cried out desperately, tugging at the door handle in a panic. Despite her incessant banging and cries for help, no one came to her aid. The lights in the restroom suddenly went out, sending a wave of fear through her already terrified mind. Shuddering in terror, Andrea curled up on the cold floor. The darkness was suffocating. She had always been haunted by a deep fear of it. Her fear traced back to a traumatic incident from her childhood when, at the age of 5, her mother had left her with a neighbor who locked her in a basement after a quarrel with her own daughter. Since that day, Andrea had harbored a crippling phobia of the dark. Unaware of Andrea's distress, Mr. Singers remained engrossed in a serious discussion with Mr. Punk. Mr. Singers, I must admit I am disappointed in your decision, but that won't deter me from continuing to support your vision, Mr. Punk expressed, showing his unwavering loyalty after years of working together. Thank you, Mr. Punk, Mr. Singers responded with a smile, grateful for the continued support as he plotted for Andrea to take over smoothly. With their discussion concluded, the two joined the others in the hall, where Sylvester had already made his entrance. Raising a glass of wine towards Mr. Singers, Sylvester declared, "Let's toast to your impending downfall and the demise of Singers Group." Surrounded by onlookers accustomed to their competitive dynamic, the tension between the two men was palpable, both openly and covertly vying for power and influence. Mr. Singers chuckled softly as he leisurely poured himself a glass of wine, taking his time before raising it to clink with Mr. Sylvester's glass. "You should start preparing your exit from Sunshine City. My wife may not be as forgiving as I am, and she might not offer you a second chance," he remarked with a hint of amusement. A shadow crossed Sylvester's face as he remembered his 3 consecutive losses against Mr. Singers. After a thoughtful sip of wine, Mr. Singers engaged in light conversation with the guests before bidding them farewell. His extended presence and sociable demeanor were a departure from his usual discreet approach at such events. Typically, he would quietly deliver his gift and slip away unnoticed, already gone before anyone realized he had attended. The guests, taken aback by his openness, flocked to Mr. Singers, who graciously greeted them and introduced Andrea as his successor to the Singers Group. Done chatting with the guests, he approached the table, expecting to find Andrea waiting for him. It stood vacant, save for her phone and purse. A crease formed on his brow as he scanned the area, unable to locate her presence. Turning to a lady nearby, he inquired, "Excuse me, have you seen my wife?" The woman's astonishment was palpable as she gaped at him in disbelief, clearly taken aback by Mr. Singers addressing her. Noticing her reaction, Mr. Singer's expression hardened as he redirected his attention to a man by the table, inquiring, "Have you seen the owner of this person's phone?" The man shook his head, replying, "No." After receiving similar responses from several others he questioned, a chill settled over Mr. Singers. Despite the opulence and grandeur often associated with the lives of the wealthy, he could sense that behind the facade, Andrea was currently enduring a difficult time. He was extremely anxious and worried, striding purposefully to the microphone as he addressed the guests. "Excuse me, has anyone seen my wife, Andrea?" Upon hearing Mr. Singer's unexpected interruption, Mr. Arnold's anger flared. He had not anticipated such audacity from Mr. Singers, who had rudely seized the microphone from the event planner in the midst of introducing his new project to the audience. "Security team, I need access to the surveillance footage immediately," Mr. Singers demanded, further provoking Mr. Arnold to the point where steam seemed to emanate from his every pore. "Mr. Singers, this is unacceptable," Mr. Arnold retorted, visibly irritated. Mr. Singers remained impassive, his gaze not even flickering towards Mr. Arnold as he delivered his response. "When it concerns Andrea, no action is too extreme. I will not hesitate to offend anyone in my search of her," he stated calmly. The guests erupted in a chorus of gasps and murmurs, with Mr. Arnold visibly teetering on the brink of losing his composure in the face of Mr. Singer's words. Mr. Singer's blatant disregard for Mr. Arnold was palpable, a level of disdain typically reserved for private conversations rather than public displays like this one. Halting the entire event to embark on a search for a woman, described in unflattering terms as fat and ugly, was unprecedented. Despite the fire of anger blazing in Mr. Arnold's eyes, he found himself unable to voice his frustration, a fact that only served to worsen his already distressed appearance. "I will not rest until those responsible for Andrea's disappearance are held accountable," Mr. Singers declared icily, his words carrying a chilling weight that sent shivers through the assembled guests. In the crowd, Mr. Gibson spotted his granddaughter fidgeting with her friends and immediately suspected her involvement in Andrea's disappearance. Mr. Singers, do you plan to confront all of the Sunshine City elites over a woman? Mr. Gibson asked incredulously. He hoped to persuade Mr. Singers to reconsider his decision to seal off the entire bouquet hall while silently instructing his granddaughter to release Andrea. However, a dissenting voice chimed in. Mr. Gibson, Mr. Singers is searching for his wife. It's not about defying the elite circle of Sunshine City. We should all support him in finding his wife, putting an end to Mr. Gibson's hopeful intervention. Enraged, Mr. Gibson shot a glare at the man who spoke up, a prominent businessman in Sunshine City. Realizing he couldn't intimidate him, Mr. Gibson reluctantly abandoned his glare. Under Mr. Singer's orders, the entire bouquet hall was encircled by armed men in black, creating an impenetrable barrier. Not a single soul could leave the hall unnoticed. A piercing scream suddenly shattered the tense silence as Anne crumpled to the ground. Mr. Gibson's head snapped in her direction, his heart pounding in his chest as he witnessed his granddaughter being cradled by a stranger. With a thunderous roar, he dashed towards them, his voice echoing through the hall. "Get help! Call an ambulance!" Mr. Singer's cold gaze bore into the unfolding scene, his expression unreadable as he checked his watch and declared in a chilling tone, "All communication lines have been severed. No one leaves or contacts the outside world until we review the surveillance footage." Mr. Gibson quivered with fury, his attempts to dial for emergency assistance futile, as his phone displayed no signal. Even those attempting to assist Anne halted in their tracks at Mr. Singer's command, their reluctance to defy him palpable in the air. Tony led 3 men in suits to where Mr. Singers was standing and announced, "We have retrieved the footage." "Display it for all to see," Mr. Singers commanded in a deep, commanding voice. Having already instructed some of his men to seek out Andrea within the hotel, Mr. Singers watched intently as the LED screen on the wall began to play back the surveillance footage captured when Andrea was present in the hall. As the footage unfolded, Mr. Singer's expression grew increasingly grim. Witnessing the humiliation Andrea endured at the hands of Anne and her friends, his gaze turned to one of intense anger directed at Mr. Gibson and Anne. Both the grandfather and granddaughter recoiled in fear, unable to meet Mr. Singer's stern gaze. Upon seeing Andrea locked in the restroom, Mr. Singers could no longer contain his emotions. He swiftly exited the hall, shouting at Tony, "Call an ambulance!" Rushing to the dimly lit restroom area, a member of the electrical team approached Mr. Singers, urgently stating, "Mr. Singers, our team is working diligently to restore the lighting. Please allow us a moment." Mr. Singers, consumed by anxiety and panic, disregarded everything he was saying as he frantically switched on his phone's torchlight. He proceeded to forcefully kick each toilet door, shouting at the top of his lungs, "Andrea, Andrea, can you hear me?" As he continued his desperate search, one door stood resilient against his kicks, the very door behind which Andrea was trapped. With a sense of urgency, he threw his body against the unyielding door, reassuring Andrea, "I'm here, Andrea. Don't be afraid." Upon the sudden illumination of the room, the hotel management swiftly arrived with spare keys to unlock the door. Mr. Singer's heart skipped a beat as he beheld Andrea lying unconscious on the cold floor. Without hesitation, he lifted her tenderly, calling out in a voice filled with alarm, "Where is the ambulance?" The atmosphere in the bouquet hall shifted suddenly as Mr. Singers, typically composed and unflappable, appeared anxious and terrified, a sight that shocked everyone present. Not even during significant challenges like facing tough competitors or navigating through a market crash that cost him billions had Mr. Singers shown such vulnerability? This unexpected display of fear from him left the onlookers stunned. Anne, sensing the tension in the air, swiftly tried to make her way out of the crowd, but her attempt was promptly halted by one of Singer's associates, who coldly informed her, "Miss, you are not permitted to leave. There is a strict directive that prohibits anyone from exiting the bouquet hall until Mr. Singers gives the word." "I'm Anne Gibson. I'm not leaving the hall. I simply need to use the restroom," Anne responded with a forced smile, hoping to bypass the guard swiftly. "Step back," the stern man in the black suit with a gun insisted impatiently, his gaze sharp and threatening. Feeling intimidated, Anne retreated into the bouquet as Mr. Singers returned to the hall after confirming that Andrea was safe. The blue tie that adorned his neck had vanished, and his coat lay discarded on a nearby chair. His eyes blazed with anger, and his expression was one of pure malice. Fixing his intense gaze on Anne and her companions, he spoke in a low, menacing tone. "Why? She never wronged any of you. Why did you harm her?" Anne and her friends hung their heads, unable to meet Mr. Singer's furious stare. Silence lingered in the room until Mr. Singers pressed on. "The Singers group and—" However, before he could declare open hostilities in business, he was abruptly cut off. "Mr. Singers, I may have erred in my treatment of her, but why does she deserve you over us? She lacked the confidence to be your wife, and frankly, she isn't attractive." Anne hesitated, fearing Mr. Singer's reaction, but she wanted to express more. Mr. Singer's eyes narrowed, his expression stern. He was surprised that a young girl could be so bold to speak so frankly to him. "Do you believe you are more attractive than her?" Mr. Singers questioned with a serious demeanor. "Yes," Anne replied confidently. Having seen Andrea, she held the belief that Andrea was unattractive and overweight. "Do all the ladies here share your opinion that you are more attractive than her?" Mr. Singers inquired, his gaze shifting to the other women present. They all nodded in agreement, silently confirming Anne's assertion. "Tony," Mr. Singers called out, not needing to give further instructions as Tony understood what was required. The LED screen illuminated with a series of images showcasing Andrea's journey from childhood to her time at Wilson Group. After skipping the wedding photos, another picture of Andrea was displayed following her marriage. The guests were left speechless by the stunning images. They couldn't believe that the woman in the photos they had just seen was the same as the previously overweight Andrea. "Are you more beautiful than her?" Mr. Singers asked Anne, his expression dark and sleeves rolled up. Anne's face paled in shock, but she shook her head and replied, "But that can't be her." Her voice was barely audible, and even the guests in the room couldn't hear her words. Mr. Singers didn't react angrily to her statement. Instead, he said, "That is her. If she wasn't pregnant, do you think any of you would stand a chance?" The guests were taken aback, their breaths catching in their throats as Anne's complexion paled in astonishment. She had been completely unaware of Andrea's pregnancy, and the shock was evident on her face. Even if she had consumed the liver of a dragon, she would never have dared to make Andrea suffer. Silence enveloped the room until Mr. Singers broke it, his voice cutting through the tension. "Bullying a pregnant woman simply because she doesn't meet your standards of beauty? Are you all so flawless that you can pass judgment on others?" Each question he posed left the guests without words, unable to muster a response. "In my eyes, true beauty lies within, and none of you seem to possess it," Mr. Singers concluded, shaking his head in disappointment. His gaze swept over Anne and her companions before he turned on his heel and exited the bouquet hall without another word. As Mr. Singers left, the oppressive atmosphere that had weighed down the room lifted, and the guests collectively released a sigh of relief. They had been suffocating under the weight of Mr. Singer's actions throughout the evening. Before Anne could even breathe a sigh of relief, she was abruptly struck by Mr. Gibson. Startled, she called out in disbelief, "Grandpa!" With a fierce glare, Mr. Gibson scolded her darkly. "How dare you offend Mr. Singers? Have you lost your mind? Do you understand the gravity of your actions?" Anne, bewildered by the barrage of questions, blinked in confusion and stammered, "Grandpa, please don't be angry. I realize I was wrong, and I promise not to do it again." Mr. Gibson was so incensed that he couldn't muster another word. His cheeks puffed out, and his mouth contorted in rage. Suddenly, Mr. Gibson convulsed in agony, clutching his chest as he gasped for air before collapsing to the floor. "Grandpa!" Anne cried out in terror. After Mr. Singers departed the venue, he rushed to the hospital. Upon his arrival, Andrea had been resuscitated and was receiving intravenous treatment. Standing at the ward door for an extended period, he eventually exhaled before entering with a look of concern etched on his face. Upon spotting Mr. Singers, Andrea mustered a feeble smile. "I'm sorry," Mr. Singers apologized, his voice filled with regret. Confusion clouded Andrea's expression as she gazed at him, her bewilderment deepening when she noticed Mr. Singer's bloodshot eyes and the tears welling up. "If I hadn't taken you there, none of this would have happened to you. I promise never to expose you to such a situation again," Mr. Singers pledged earnestly. Moved to tears, Andrea locked eyes with Mr. Singers. Every action of Mr. Singers was driven by his desire for her happiness. He sought to facilitate her integration and success, even assuming responsibility for her setbacks. "No, you don't need to say it. Rest now. I'll speak with the doctor," Mr. Singers interrupted gently, guessing Andrea's unspoken words as he turned to leave the ward. Upon arriving at the doctor's office, he was promptly ushered in and offered a seat. "Mr. Singers, it is imperative that your wife avoids any activities that could jeopardize her baby's well-being. Continued stress may trigger premature labor, which could pose serious risks to the fetus," the doctor cautioned solemnly as he reviewed the medical report. Mr. Singer's expression hardened as he absorbed the gravity of the situation. Andrea was only 5 months into her pregnancy. After expressing his gratitude to the doctor, Mr. Singers exited the office. As he did, Tony approached him. "Mr. Singers, the individual responsible for the power outage has been apprehended," Tony informed him. "Good?" Mr. Singers responded tersely before departing the hospital premises with his entourage. Pulling over at a warehouse, he alighted from his vehicle flanked by his bodyguards and made his way inside the building accompanied by over 30 armed security personnel. Within a dimly lit underground chamber in the warehouse, a man was bound to a pillar. "Which gang do you belong to?" Mr. Singers inquired sternly. Upon catching sight of Mr. Singers brandishing his gun, the man bound to the pillar was stricken with fear, his eyes widening in disbelief. Being a member of a gang in Sunshine City, he knew all too well the reputation of Mr. Singers, the one individual they never dared to cross. "If you intend to end my life, go ahead. I won't betray my comrades," the man bound to the pillar declared defiantly. "As you wish," Mr. Singers calmly replied before swiftly pulling the trigger, sending a bullet straight into the man's forehead. The bound man's eyes remained wide in shock, unable to comprehend the sudden and brutal turn of events. After discarding his gloves, Mr. Singers nonchalantly tossed the gun to one of his subordinates before briskly turning to depart. "Mr. Singers, he's a member of the Watchdog Gang," Tony promptly informed. "Eliminate the gang from Sunshine City," Mr. Singers ordered before slipping into his car. Driving away from the warehouse, he made a pit stop at a flower shop on the bustling street, parking his car nearby and stepping inside. "What kind of flowers are you looking for?" the florist inquired as Mr. Singers approached the counter. Inexperienced in matters of flowers, Mr. Singers had never bought any before, not even for his deceased wife whom he couldn't afford to then. She's in the hospital. What flowers are best for wishing someone a speedy recovery? Mr. Singers asked. Observing Mr. Singers closely, the florist shook his head, sensing a lack of effort in Mr. Singer's marital relationship. Sir, it's important to buy her flowers regularly to make her feel happy and maintain her well-being, not just when she's unwell or something happens, the florist advised earnestly. Mr. Singers nodded thoughtfully, taking the florist's words to heart. Thank you, Mr. Singers replied. Lilies are perfect for a patient. I'll prepare them for you, sir, the florist said with a happy smile. Stepping away from the counter, he arranged the lilies, surprised to see Mr. Singers purchasing an abundance of them, nearly emptying the entire store. Shaking his head in disbelief, he pondered the ways of the wealthy. Upon returning to the hospital, Agatha was already there. When she caught sight of Mr. Singers bearing flowers, her expression soured. Never before had she received a gift from him, despite working alongside him for the past 25 years. Though she clenched her fists in secret frustration, she managed to keep her discontent hidden behind a neutral facade. Mr. Singers, the Gibsons and the other families who wronged you have brought their daughters to offer apologies. Agatha approached him and relayed the message. Mr. Singers, with an impatient tone, continued his stride toward Andrea's ward without halting. They wronged Andrea. They should be apologizing to her, he stated firmly. Agatha seethed as she watched Mr. Singers disappear into Andrea's room, leaving her behind in the hospital corridor, her anger palpable. Turning around, she spotted Tony leaning against the wall, a lit cigarette in hand. Smoking in the hospital, Agatha remarked through gritted teeth. She believed that Mr. Singers and Tony had been acting recklessly ever since their return from Vegas. Extinguishing the cigarette, Tony retorted. I can't help it. Agatha composed herself with a deep breath, then approached Tony, standing directly in front of him. Do you believe Mr. Singers is making the right decision by marrying her? Since his return, our company's operations have ground to a halt. He no longer takes his work seriously. Instead, he acts like her caretaker all the time. Tony's lips curved into a smile. He had feelings for Agatha, but she had her sights set on Mr. Singers and turned him down. Are you upset because he didn't choose you? Tony teased. What? Agatha's eyes widened in surprise, caught off guard by Tony's unexpected words as they discussed Andrea and Mr. Singers. I know how it feels. I felt the same way when you rejected me. Sometimes we have to get used to feeling unwanted, Tony remarked before walking away. Agatha watched him leave, her mind reeling with confusion and shock. She then stamped her foot in frustration, feeling overwhelmed by the actions of these two men in her life. Remember to breathe, just breathe, Agatha repeated to herself, taking a moment to compose her emotions. After leaving the hospital, she made calls on her phone while walking, then settled into her car to wait for Mr. Singers to emerge. Despite waiting for 2 hours, Mr. Singers did not appear. Frustrated and disappointed, Agatha accelerated out of the hospital, narrowly avoiding hitting a pedestrian crossing the road in the dark of night. As the night faded into dawn, sunlight streamed through the automated blinds in the hospital ward, illuminating Andrea lying in her bed. Andrea woke to see Mr. Singers' exhausted face and dark circles under his eyes. Good morning, my dear, Mr. Singers greeted her, planting a gentle kiss on her forehead. You didn't sleep all night? She asked, astonished by his unwavering dedication and care for her. She had never before experienced such a level of care. When she fell ill, Valentine had simply bought medication and left her at the hospital, continuing with his daily routine. How are you feeling? Mr. Singers didn't directly respond to her query. Instead, he asked about her well-being. I'm feeling good, Andrea replied. Mr. Singers nodded, then got up and exited the ward. Just as he left, Agatha entered. She had come to discuss Mr. Singer's schedule, but found only Andrea there. Agatha fixed her gaze on Andrea. Apart from 2 previous encounters, they had never conversed, and Agatha's expression made it clear that she harbored some dislike towards Andrea. "Andrea," Agatha called out slowly. Her eyes locked on Andrea. Andrea tensed up, answering in a barely audible voice, almost a whisper. "Yes?" "What will make you leave Mr. Singers?" Agatha asked with a frustrated expression. Andrea was taken aback as Agatha's words sank in. She never expected someone to try to buy her out of her marriage. Without a word, Agatha continued, her tone intense. 3,500,000, a billion. Name your price. I want you to leave Mr. Singers. You're not only disrupting his work, but you're also affecting his health. He hasn't eaten since yesterday and stayed up all night worrying about you." As Agatha's words weighed heavily on Andrea, a wave of guilt washed over her. She wasn't aware of these, and now she understood Agatha's concern. "So how much will it take for you to walk away?" Agatha pressed, now standing closely in front of Andrea. Andrea gazed fearfully at Agatha, gripping her hospital gown tightly as she took a deep breath and began, I understand. I will write the check," Agatha interjected, not allowing Andrea to finish. "No!" Andrea exclaimed in a panic, her expression one of extreme anxiety. The ward's door creaked open, and Mr. Singers entered, fixing his gaze on Andrea before turning to address Agatha. "What are you doing here?" "Mr. Singers, I brought your daily schedule but couldn't find you earlier, so I had a brief chat with your wife," Agatha replied, forcing a smile. "Clear my schedule. I won't be seeing anyone today. You can handle everything on your own," Mr. Singers declared calmly, as he walked over to set down the breakfast he had personally bought. Agatha, upon hearing Mr. Singer's words, felt a mix of anger and frustration. When she had been ill, Mr. Singers had never shown her the same care and attention he was now giving to Andrea. "Okay." She lowered her head, concealing her emotions, and quietly exited the ward. As soon as she stepped outside, tears streamed down her face uncontrollably. After leaving the hospital, she drove straight to Tony's office. Without even bothering to knock, she barged in. "Agatha, what's wrong?" Tony asked, noticing the traces of dried tears on her face. "Do you not find me beautiful?" Agatha countered, catching Tony off guard. Tony, puzzled but sincere, replied, "You are the most beautiful and intelligent woman I've ever known." Agatha glared at Tony, frustration evident in her eyes. "Then why didn't he want me?" she demanded. Tony, understanding who she was referring to without being told, prepared to respond when Agatha surprised him by kissing him suddenly. Tony's eyes widened in shock as he stared at Agatha, taken aback. She wrapped her arm around his neck, drawing him in for more kisses. With his last shred of reason, Tony attempted to dissuade her. "Agatha, we really shouldn't be doing this," he implored. Ignoring his words, she seized his lips once more, her hands fumbling with the buttons of his shirt. Tony's resistance crumbled, abandoning all caution as he pulled her close and intensified the kiss. Their hands explored feverishly, shedding their garments until they stood exposed in their entirety. Tony gazed into her eyes, a moment of hesitation before he spoke in a low, husky voice, desire evident in every syllable. "Are you sure about this, Agatha?" Lying on the table, Agatha clung tightly to Tony, urging him on as she drew him closer. She gasped, her eyes shut tight as Tony entered her, his movements accompanied by eager groans. "Take me, Mr. Singers," Agatha moaned, lost in the throes of their shared desire and escalating passion. Despite hearing her call out Mr. Singer's name in the throes of passion, Tony found himself unable to resist. "I'm coming," Tony groaned with fervor. Mr. Singers, fill me with your cum. Let me bear your child, Agatha responded. Following her lead, Tony complied. As the intimacy waned, Agatha lay still on the table, her eyes fluttering open. She gazed up at the ceiling, tears streaming down her cheeks. Tony's expression shifted as he noticed the traces of blood around his member. The realization dawned on him. He had taken Agatha's virginity. Remorse, guilt, and frustration flooded his being. Agatha, he began softly, but faltered upon seeing her tears. Overwhelmed with emotion, Agatha turned to Tony. I want this to remain between us. Let's pretend it never happened, she whispered. Agatha hastily dressed and departed, leaving Tony bewildered and vexed. Unsure of what to do, Tony, consumed by anger, lashed out by kicking the table where they had just been intimate. Alone in her car after leaving Tony's office, Agatha sat weeping, her head resting on the steering wheel. She started the car and drove to a nearby bar. Inside the bar, Agatha ordered a few glasses of liquor and soon found herself feeling tipsy. A man approached her table and asked, "Hello there. May I join you, beautiful?" "Are you Mr. Singers?" Agatha slurred. "No, I'm Stephen." "And you are?" the man replied politely, extending his hand for a handshake. Agatha swatted his hand away, exclaiming, "I don't want just anyone. I want Mr. Singers. I want him." Tears streamed down her face as she continued, her voice wavering with emotion. "I had hoped to give him my first time." The man sitting across from her looked on, feeling awkward and unsure how to respond to the flood of personal information he had just heard. "Lady, how about we go to my room and have a proper conversation?" the man suggested, eyeing Agatha. "Get lost," a deep voice snarled in anger. Turning his head, the man was met with a fist hurtling towards his face. Struck by the punch, he crumpled to the floor. Tony reached out to Agatha, helping her up while grabbing the glass of liquor. "That's enough. No more drinking," he said gently. "Are you Mr. Singers?" Agatha asked, pouting. Ignoring her question, Tony guided her out of the bar. The sun was already high in the sky as they emerged from the dimly lit establishment. Tucking Agatha into the car, Tony settled into the driver's seat. "Take me to meet Mr. Singers," Agatha implored. Ignoring her request, Tony started driving towards his home, but Agatha persisted, repeatedly demanding, "Take me to Mr. Singers." Growing increasingly frustrated, Tony eventually reversed the car and headed towards the hospital to find Mr. Singers. As he braked to a stop, Agatha stumbled out of the car towards Mr. Singers, who was preparing to leave to buy essentials for Andrea, who will be staying in the hospital for a few more days, so the doctor could monitor her health and the well-being of her unborn child. Mr. Singers frowned as he saw Agatha, clearly intoxicated, approaching him. "Mr. Singers, I love you," Agatha shouted at the top of her lungs, oblivious to the public setting. At this time of the day, the hospital was teeming with activity. Despite being renowned as the premier healthcare facility in the city, the steep hospital bills had the potential to deter those with lower incomes. However, this did not dissuade people from seeking medical care at Hills Hospital due to its exceptional service. As 3 ambulances departed, 2 more were seen approaching the hospital. A commotion caused by Agatha drew the attention of many onlookers. Even though the hospital guards were present, they hesitated to intervene upon recognizing the individuals involved. "Agatha, you've had too much to drink. Please refrain from causing a scene," Mr. Singer scolded, aware of the spectators reaching for their phones to capture the moment. If footage of the incident were to surface online, he knew that armchair critics and sensationalist bloggers would seize the opportunity to craft the most scandalous headlines imaginable. "No, I am not drunk. Look, I can stand on my feet," Agatha argued as she staggered forward, struggling to walk properly. "Come with me, Agatha," Mr. Singer said, reaching out to catch her arm and guide her towards his car. Agatha resisted, her eyes filled with tears as she asked, "Why?" Mr. Singer's expression hardened, understanding Agatha's emotions. He had no intention of punishing her. Gazing deeply into her eyes, his face softened as he saw tears streaming down her cheeks. "Am I not beautiful? What does she have that I don't? Do you want me to gain weight?" Agatha sobbed. "I'm sorry, Agatha," Mr. Singer said before swiftly and gently pressing on her neck, rendering her unconscious. He lifted her limp body, carrying her towards the car where Tony sat watching them. When Tony spotted Mr. Singers approaching his car carrying Agatha, he swiftly exited the vehicle and opened the back seat door. As Mr. Singers gently placed Agatha inside, he turned to Tony and entrusted him with a heartfelt request. "Take good care of her. Call me when she wakes up." After a brief pat on Tony's back, Mr. Singers departed without waiting for a response, cognizant of Tony's affection for Agatha. Driving away, Mr. Singers procured all the items Andrea required from a nearby store. As he left the establishment, he overheard a child's voice exclaiming, "Mom, I love this comic book. All my classmates have it." Glancing in the direction of the voice, he spotted a 4-year-old girl standing with a woman who appeared to be her mother, judging by the woman's awkwardness and embarrassment. "Cheery, I promise to buy it for you once I receive my salary," the anxious mother assured her daughter. Cheery pouted and retorted, "Mom, you promised to buy me a teddy bear. Can you afford it with the comic book?" Mr. Singers stood nearby, his heart heavy, as he overheard the conversation between the mother and child, reminding him of his own wife and daughter he had left behind in Vegas many years ago. When he had left them, they were struggling with poverty, and he had even left behind some debts. Silently, he entered the store and purchased 7 copies of the popular comic books before stepping back outside. As the mother and child began to walk away, Mr. Singers felt a tug at his heart and called out, "Could you please pause for a moment?" Turning back, the mother and child faced Mr. Singers. The mother's expression held a mix of curiosity and caution, but as she noticed the stack of comic books in his hands, her features froze in disbelief. Mr. Singers knelt down before the little girl and gently asked, "What's your name, kid?" The young girl gazed up at the tall, handsome Mr. Singers, blinking her large eyes before responding with a sweet, cheerful cheery. Mr. Singers smiled warmly at her before presenting 3 comic books he had purchased from the shop, offering them to her as a gift. "These are for you, as a token of appreciation for being so smart and kind. Your mother is working hard for you, and if she could afford it, she wouldn't wait for you to ask for things." Cheery blinked in confusion at his words, but still nodded enthusiastically, taking the comic books and saying, "Thank you, sir." With a nod, Mr. Singers rose to his feet and turned to face Cheery's mother, who was on the verge of tears. "Miss, if you're struggling to find a job, here's my card. I have a position for you at my company." Turning away, Mr. Singers left the scene, leaving Cheery's mother staring after him, amazed that there were still kind strangers like him in the world. Cheery's mother failed to thoroughly inspect the complimentary card, and by the time she eventually glanced at it, Mr. Singers had already departed. Despite not being accompanied by his security entourage, his security team maintained a vigilant presence, closely monitoring his every move. "Mr. Singers?" Cherry's mom shrieked in disbelief, flinging the complimentary card in shock. The realization that the man who had purchased her child's comic books and handed her his card was none other than Mr. Singers, one of the wealthiest individuals in the country and the richest man in Sunshine City, overwhelmed her. Unaware of the impact of his card, Mr. Singers proceeded to the hospital, carrying all the items he had purchased to Andrea's ward. Upon opening the door to the ward, he found Andrea already seated on the hospital bed. After stashing the items he had purchased in a locker within her room, he made his way over to her bedside. "I got these for you. They should help pass the time when you're feeling bored," Mr. Singer said as he handed Andrea the stack of comic books Hiao had bought. Andrea gazed at the children's comic books he had selected for her with a look of bewilderment, unsure of what to make of them. "These are the latest and most popular ones. If they're not your style, I can always find something else for you," Mr. Singers offered, noticing Andrea's perplexed expression. Andrea gazed at Mr. Singers before accepting the comic books from his outstretched hands. As she thumbed through them, her eyes welled up with tears. Memories flooded back from her childhood when her mom couldn't afford to buy a copy for her, and the taunts of her classmates still echoed in her mind. With tear-filled eyes, she looked up at Mr. Singers and whispered, "Thank you." Mr. Singers let out a sigh, realizing that his guess earlier wasn't wrong. If he could turn back time, he would never have left his wife and child. Gently, he reached out and brushed away the tears streaming down Andrea's cheeks, murmuring, "There's no need to cry." Andrea nodded, her gratitude evident in her eyes. "I'll go fetch us some dinner," he said softly. With a nod from Andrea, Mr. Singers rose from where he sat, swiftly exiting the ward and the hospital building. Stepping into the sprawling garden at the rear of the hospital, he retrieved a photograph from his pocket. The image captured a radiant smile on a woman's face. "I'm sorry, Rebecca. I wish I had the courage to stay and protect you and our child. You've suffered so much." Mr. Singer's eyes were bloodshot, his voice trembling as he took a deep breath. "I'll make sure she's happy now. Wherever you are, I hope you're happy too." After speaking, Mr. Singer gazed at the photograph for a long moment before carefully placing it back in his breast pocket. He turned and headed back into the hospital, making his way towards Andrea's ward. Mr. Gibson and a few other men unexpectedly crossed paths with Mr. Singers. They were accompanied by their granddaughter and daughters, notably Anne, whose expression betrayed her reluctance to be there. Despite her reluctance, the Gibsons had been experiencing a series of unfortunate events. Their once thriving business had been plagued by misfortune. Their sea shipments were being targeted by pirates. 2 of their vessels had encountered technical difficulties, and several of their supermarkets had been destroyed by fires across the country. Despite their efforts to uncover the culprits responsible for these incidents, the truth remained elusive. The situation seemed dire, with no clear path to resolution. "Mr. Singers, we have come to offer our sincerest apologies," Mr. Gibson spoke in a subdued tone. As the eldest among them, he reluctantly assumed the role of spokesperson, as none of the others were willing to step forward and take charge. Mr. Singers responded with a smile. "I wasn't the one they offended, but my wife. If she is willing, she will let you all off." His pleasant demeanor would lead one to believe that he was not the mastermind behind the miseries they were enduring. If Mr. Gibson didn't know him well, he would assume that everything was going smoothly. "When can we see your wife, Mr. Singers?" inquired Mr. Gibson, his tone tinged with anxiety. "We are just about to have dinner, and the doctor has cautioned me against allowing her to be disturbed or anxious. None of you can see her for now," Mr. Singers replied. Mr. Gibson's expression hardened. Each passing minute without obtaining forgiveness meant the potential loss of one of his supermarkets and his businesses. A sudden sheen of cold sweat enveloped him. Indeed, Mr. Singers lived up to his reputation as the noble devil, a man who could smile at you while quietly orchestrating your downfall without revealing a hint of his true intentions. Mr. Singers didn't wait for another word before turning and exiting the hospital. Regardless of the number of times he was called, he didn't glance back. Upon returning with dinner, he made for himself and Andrea. He found Mr. Gibson and the others gathered outside Andrea's ward, uncertain whether to enter or depart, seemingly immobilized. Mr. Gibson's eyes widened in astonishment when he spotted Mr. Singers holding the meal bags, while the other men and even Anne reacted with audible gasps and furrowed brows. Known for his cold-hearted and unromantic reputation, Mr. Singers was perceived as thick-headed and inept at caring for a lady. How did his act of carrying meal bags for a woman align with this description? Disregarding the astonishment on their faces, Mr. Singers proceeded into the ward and served lunch. "Mr. Singers, are there people lingering by the ward door?" Andrea asked softly, discerning the persistent voices and footsteps that had persisted for 3 hours. "Yes, they came seeking forgiveness, but let's have dinner first," responded Mr. Singers casually, giving no indication that he was referring to the titans of the business world in Sunshine City. Andrea's expression betrayed her worry, even as she shared a meal with Mr. Singers. Her thoughts were with the people waiting outside. "Mr. Singers, may we go and speak with them?" Andrea inquired tentatively, seeking his guidance before making a decision. Looking at her with a gentle gaze, Mr. Singers asked softly, "If I let them in, would that be all right with you?" Andrea nodded in agreement. Mr. Singers then cleared away their dinner plates and made his way to the door. Opening it, he surveyed the faces of Mr. Gibson and his companions. "You may enter now," Mr. Singers announced. Mr. Gibson and the other men breathed a collective sigh of relief. They had just received troubling news that one of Mr. Gibson's supermarkets had been raided by the police after drugs were found on the premises, and the others had also received similarly distressing updates. Eager to make amends, they all immediately dropped to their knees before Andrea, with the exception of Anne, who stood defiantly, showing no intention of kneeling before her. Anne's face was twisted with contempt and disdain as she looked at Andrea. "Mr. Gibson, you are quite bold," Mr. Singers remarked in a chilling tone upon noticing Anne's refusal to kneel. Almost fainting in horror at the sound of his name from Mr. Singer's lips, Mr. Gibson shot a fiery glare at Anne. Sensing the gravity of the situation from her grandfather's terrifying expression, Anne reluctantly relented and knelt alongside the others. "We apologize, Andrea. As a gesture of our sincerity, I would like to offer you 2% of the shares in the Hi-Fi company, making you a board member." One of the kneeling men stepped forward and presented a document. "Please, reluctantly accept 20% of Harry's franchise, Mrs. Singers." "Mrs. Singers, we are looking forward to having you in our board meetings. 40% of the Winding Group shares now belongs to you after signing this document." Andrea was taken aback by the succession of shareholders relinquishing their company stakes in a bid for forgiveness. Sitting motionless, she watched as Mr. Singers gathered the documents explaining, "My wife is heavily pregnant and unable to move. I will bear this burden on her behalf." Mr. Gibson and his associates seethed with anger as they were coerced into surrendering their shares, silently fuming at being referred to as burdens. Though their hearts boiled with resentment, they masked their true feelings behind strained smiles that revealed more than they concealed. "Andrea, consider granting them forgiveness. They have all humbly sought mercy," Mr. Singers implored gently. Stunned speechless, Andrea gradually regained her composure, struggling to comprehend the unconventional display of contrition before her. This was a form of penance she had never encountered before. The room fell silent as Mr. Gibson and the others held their breath, awaiting Andrea's response. Finally, she spoke. "I forgive you all." With those words, a collective exhale filled the air as they released the tension they had been holding. As the group prepared to leave the ward, they each took a moment to address Mrs. Singers. "We will be waiting for you and wish you a speedy recovery," they said in succession, before departing. Once they had gone, the ward grew quiet. Mr. Singers carefully placed the documents outlining the transfer of shares on the table before turning to Andrea. "You can sign them once you have fully recovered," he informed her. Andrea gazed at Mr. Singers for a long moment before softly asking, "Did you make them give up their shares in exchange for forgiveness?" It was not easy to discern from their expressions, as their faces had shown reluctance, yet they had still relinquished their shares. Mr. Singers didn't respond immediately. Instead, he gently took Andrea's hand in his and gave it a reassuring squeeze before speaking. "Andrea, the world you perceive isn't always as it seems. Not everyone is deserving of your kindness, and every action carries consequences. If wrongdoings go unpunished, they are bound to be repeated without remorse." Pausing for a moment, Mr. Singers studied Andrea's expression intently before continuing with a somber tone. "They have taken advantage of your goodwill. With those shares in your possession, you wouldn't want their companies to suffer, would you?" Instinctively, Andrea nodded in agreement, realizing the truth in Mr. Singer's words. Glancing at the clock on the wall, which now showed 9 p.m., Mr. Singers reached for one of the comic books he had bought and presented it to Andrea. "It's getting late. I'll read this to you so you can drift off to sleep with pleasant dreams." He assisted Andrea in lying down in the bed before he started reading from the book. Snake and Frog were once friends, living in the mill town. Andrea's eyelids grew heavy as she listened to Mr. Singer's bedtime story, eventually drifting into a deep sleep. Stopping his reading when he noticed Andrea had fallen asleep, Mr. Singers carefully set aside the comic book and ensured Andrea was covered snugly with a bedsheet. He then settled on the sofa, keeping a watchful eye over her as she slept. The following morning, the sound of his ringing phone roused him from his slumber. Silencing the phone, he left the ward before answering the call. "Mr. Singers, Agatha is awake," Tony's voice echoed through the phone. "All right," Mr. Singers acknowledged, before ending the call and returning to check on Andrea, who was still peacefully asleep. After confirming she was resting undisturbed, he left the hospital and drove to Tony's residence. Upon reaching Tony's house, Tony escorted him into the living room. Agatha sat down, her complexion pallid, cradling a teacup in her hands as she sipped in silence. Raising her gaze, she locked eyes with Mr. Singers, a bitter smile playing on Agatha's lips. Without a word, Tony discreetly departed the living room, leaving the two alone for their private conversation. "Are you planning to send me away?" Agatha inquired softly, her reluctance evident on her face. Mr. Singers removed his coat and settled in, his gaze unwavering as she spoke. "Don't ask me to leave. I can't bear to be apart from you, Mr. Singers. I wish to remain by your side and continue serving you." Glancing intently at her, Mr. Singers posed a question. "Do you understand why I married Andrea?" Agatha straightened in her seat, attempting to comprehend but finding no answers. She knew of Mr. Singer's late wife and his missing daughter, but the notion of him marrying his own child seemed preposterous. Surely there had to be a different explanation. After pondering for a while, Agatha struggled to find an answer, eventually murmuring, "I don't know," while gazing down at her intertwined fingers. "Because she is carrying my child, Agatha. That's why I married her." "Surely you understand this," Mr. Singers stated firmly, his expression serious. Looking up, Agatha responded anxiously, "Mr. Singers, I can carry your child. I am willing. I want to be the mother of your children. She can't give you beautiful and intelligent kids like I can. Please." "Enough, Agatha," Mr. Singers interjected sharply, cutting her off. He couldn't comprehend why everyone seemed to regard Andrea as inferior. With a somber tone, he continued, "Agatha, you need to take some time off to cool off. Perhaps when you return, you will be able to distinguish between work and personal matters." As Mr. Singers stood up, Agatha panicked, causing the teacup to slip from her trembling hands and crash to the floor. Tears welled up in her eyes as she pleaded, "Please, don't send me away." As Mr. Singers walked towards the door, he mentioned, "The flight has been arranged, and you will depart at dusk." After exiting the house, Mr. Singers encountered Tony outside and advised him, "You're accompanying her, so make the most of the time you'll have together." "Thank you, Mr. Singers," Tony expressed gratefully, unsurprised that Mr. Singers was already privy to his feelings for Agatha. Had Mr. Singers not known, it would have been a shock, as he had a way of keeping tabs on everyone around him, including his adversaries. Tony lingered outside the house waiting for Mr. Singers to depart before returning inside. Upon entering the living room, Tony's expression shifted dramatically as he froze in place. Agatha held a gun to her head, tears streaming down her face without pause. Tony's palm grew sweaty as he cautiously moved closer, urging, "Andrea, please don't do this. Don't harm yourself, my love. Stay back!" Agatha shrieked frantically, halting Tony in his tracks with a crazed look in her eyes. She knew that if Tony advanced any further, she might not be able to pull the trigger and inflict harm upon herself. "Agatha, let's discuss this. Suicide is not the solution," Tony urged, trying to persuade her. "I can't leave. I want to stay in Sunshine City," Agatha replied tearfully, the gun trembling in her hand. Tony's expression hardened. He had always followed Mr. Singer's orders without question. After a moment of silence, he composed himself and spoke gently. "Agatha, leaving Sunshine City is in your best interest. Staying here will only harm your mental well-being and emotions. I refuse to go. If you take me away, I'll end it all," Agatha interrupted anxiously and resolutely. Tony felt a pang of helplessness. Despite his outward composure, he was internally distressed. After a deep breath, he relented, saying, "Fine, you can stay in Sunshine City, but you must remain within the mansion. How does that sound?" Agatha blinked in disbelief and asked, her face showing a mix of emotions, "Really?" "Yes, you're going to stay with me." Tony nodded sadly, his face betraying the hurt he felt. Agatha, oblivious to his mood, skipped over to him happily and embraced him with great joy. "That's fantastic, Tony. I will never leave the mansion, I promise you," Agatha said cheerfully as she tossed the gun aside. Tony's expression remained stoic, his mood darkening. "Excuse me, Agatha. I will go get us something to eat." Without waiting for Agatha's response, he gently disentangled himself from her, picked up the gun, and walked away. Unaware of Tony's feelings, Agatha remained grinning happily as she reclined in the chair, her thoughts consumed by her desire to stay in Sunshine City. Once Tony had left the living room, he made his way to the balcony and lit a cigarette. His mind was in turmoil as he exhaled a puff of smoke, torn between not wanting Agatha to end her life with his gun, not wanting to defy Mr. Singers, and grappling with the conflicting voices in his head and heart. In a moment of frustration, he punched the wall and muttered under his breath, "Mr. Singers, I am sorry." Unaware of this incident, Mr. Singers, driving back to the hospital, decided to pull over at a breakfast store on his way. After purchasing breakfast for both of them, he returned to Andrea's ward and found the doctor conversing with her. Upon entering Andrea's ward, the doctor straightened up and addressed Mr. Singers, saying, "It's good you're back. I just completed a thorough examination and she's in perfect condition. You can take her home now." "Thank you, Dr. Sam," Mr. Singers replied graciously. "It was your exceptional care and effort in nursing your wife back to health. I simply did my job. I am unworthy of your gratitude." "Excuse me," Dr. Sam responded, before promptly exiting the room. Avoiding any further interaction, he hurriedly left, not wanting to unintentionally offend Mr. Singers or anyone else present. "Let's have breakfast so I can take you home," Mr. Singer said to Andrea before unpacking the breakfast he had bought. After they finished their meal, Mr. Singers escorted Andrea back to the mansion where housekeeper Wynne and the other servants warmly welcomed her. "Welcome back, Mrs. Singers. The house felt empty without you," they exclaimed. "We will always pray for your good health, Mrs. Singers. Please don't hesitate to ask for anything you need," they assured her as they helped her to her room. Turning to housekeeper Wynne, Mr. Singers instructed, "I want Andrea to rest and not lift a finger. Make sure she is well taken care of, fulfill her every request, and don't let her move around unassisted. She is heavily pregnant." Housekeeper Wynne nodded attentively, ensuring she followed Mr. Singer's instructions to the letter without missing a beat. After finishing his conversation, Mr. Singers swiftly exited the mansion, trading his outfit for a new one. This time, he opted not to drive his red Lamborghini but instead rode in an SUV with his driver at the wheel. Seated in the back of the car was Tony's replacement, who informed him, "Mr. Singers, the governor's business forum started a few minutes ago. We may arrive 10 minutes late." "What about the palace decision? Have they reached a conclusion?" Mr. Singers inquired. "The Queen has requested your presence at the palace. They are withholding their decision until you attend the invitation," Tate promptly replied. Mr. Singers frowned, but remained silent as they headed towards the governor's business forum venue. Upon arrival, he entered the venue, accompanied by his security detail. Before he could step inside the venue, he encountered Sylvester making his way out. A smirk played on Mr. Sylvester's lips as he spoke. "Singers, you're a vulnerable man now. It's all too easy to break you. I would have taken you down long ago if I had known she was your Achilles heel." Mr. Singer's expression hardened, understanding immediately who Sylvester meant by his weakness. "Your wife and 3 children in California aren't as safe as you think, and neither are your family in Paris. Just a word from me could send them straight to hell," Mr. Singers replied icily, his eyes glinting with killing intent. Sylvester's expression morphed into one of astonishment as he processed Mr. Singers's unexpected knowledge of his wife and children. For years, Sylvester had cultivated the facade of a solitary businessman, concealing his family life from prying eyes. Perplexed by Mr. Singers's decision not to exploit his family as leverage after their prolonged rivalry, Sylvester hesitated before attempting to speak. "Mr. Singers, he began, only to be abruptly cut off by Mr. Singers. "Sylvester, I have no interest in your words. Just remember, she is my red line. Anyone who dares to harm her will face the consequences, and not even their loved ones will be spared," Mr. Singers declared firmly, shutting down any further conversation. With that final statement, Mr. Singers departed with his entourage, leaving Sylvester behind with a brooding countenance. Despite perceiving a potential opportunity to outmaneuver Mr. Singers, Sylvester found himself sinking deeper into a streak of defeats, leading to frustration and a sense of helplessness. His jaw clenched tightly, Sylvester glowered at Mr. Singers, his expression a mix of defiance and reluctance. Mr. Singers made his way directly to the governor without glancing back at Sylvester. By the time he arrived, the governor's business forum had already concluded. "Mr. Singers, your absence disrupted my speech," the governor announced as Mr. Singers entered the lounge where he was seated. "Governor Mike, I apologize for my delay. I was attending to my pregnant wife," Mr. Singers explained as they shook hands and took their seats. "I am entrusting you with 50% of the shares in the West Ring development. I did not feel confident handing the project over to anyone else," Governor Mike declared. Mr. Singers looked at me with surprise. "He didn't lobby for the project." Governor Mike gazed at Mr. Singers with a knowing smile. As if he could read his thoughts, he said, "Mr. Singers, you truly stand out among the businessmen of Sunshine City. Your unwavering commitment to your consumers and your steadfast adherence to fair market prices, from small traders to large stores, sets you apart." Reflecting on the past challenges when inflation gripped the economy and other regions were in turmoil with protests, Governor Mike appreciated Mr. Singer's refusal to raise prices had shielded the citizens of Sunshine City from the worst of the crisis. Governor Mike seized the moment to express his gratitude for Mr. Singer's invaluable support during those trying times. Mr. Singers reassured Governor Mike, "Governor, I promise to initiate the project and ensure it remains affordable for low-income individuals. I will facilitate access to loans so that anyone can purchase a home, effectively addressing the issue of homelessness on our streets." Governor Mike, upon hearing Mr. Singer's words, breathed a sigh of relief. His initiative to develop the district aimed to tackle the rising number of homeless individuals in the city, where housing in prime areas had become unattainable for many. "Governor Mike, I would like to introduce my wife to you. I hope you can extend your support to her as well, just as you have done for me." Mr. Singers took the opportunity to seek backing for Andrea. Governor Mike's expression revealed surprise. Although he maintained a distance from the elite circles of Sunshine City, he was not oblivious to the rumors and news circulating among them. He didn't expect Mr. Singers to love the woman who was described as fat and ugly to such an extent. "I'll always have her back, Mr. Singers," Governor Mike promptly assured, eager to forge a friendship with him. Unbeknownst to Andrea, who was heading to the kitchen, Mr. Singers was actively championing her cause. "Ma'am Andrea, is there anything you need? Are you hungry? What can I prepare for you?" Housekeeper Wynne and the other servants anxiously approached Andrea, bombarding her with questions. With a warm smile, Andrea responded, "I want to cook my husband's favorite dish. Does anyone know what that is?" When Andrea announced her intention to cook, Housekeeper Wynne and the other servants visibly paled, beads of sweat forming on their foreheads despite the cool air in the room. Housekeeper Wynne, looking even more ashen-faced, proposed, "How about you relax in the living room and watch some movies? I'll speak to the cook and have him prepare Mr. Singer's favorite dish." Andrea shook her head firmly. "I want to do it myself," she insisted. Without another word, she strode into the kitchen, leaving Housekeeper Wynne and the other servants exchanging worried glances filled with fear. "Housekeeper Wynne, what should we do? If Mr. Singer returns and finds out we let Ma'am cook, we'll all be in serious trouble," one of the servants whispered anxiously. "I'm too young to die," another servant lamented quietly. "We must go and help her in the kitchen. We can't prevent her from cooking, but we must ensure she doesn't do it alone," Housekeeper Wynne declared, mustering her courage and taking charge of the situation. Her ability to handle crises effectively was a key factor in her appointment as the mansion's housekeeper. All the servants, including Housekeeper Wynne, gathered in the kitchen to prepare the meal together. As they were busy in the kitchen, Mr. Singers arrived home. Stepping out of his car, he made his way towards the house's entrance. Upon seeing the anxious servants eagerly welcoming him and sensing the tense atmosphere, Mr. Singer's expression darkened. He entered the living room and cast a sharp gaze around the room. His eyes landed on Housekeeper Wynne and the rest of the servants standing nearby, visibly trembling with fear. "What's going on?" Mr. Singers inquired sternly after taking off his coat. "Mr. Singers, we apologize for not being able to dissuade Madam. She was adamant about cooking for you, so we assisted her in the kitchen, ensuring she didn't exert herself or strain the unborn child," Housekeeper Wynne hastily explained, her voice strained. "Where is the meal she prepared?" Mr. Singers inquired, causing Housekeeper Wynne's eyes to widen in shock at the unexpected question. Housekeeper Wynne had feared the worst when she believed they would all be fired, and her heart sank as she hesitated to answer Mr. Singer's question about the meal Andrea had prepared. Lost in her thoughts, she stared blankly at Mr. Singers, unable to respond promptly. "Where is the meal?" Mr. Singers asked again, his impatience evident in his tone. Suddenly jolted back to reality, housekeeper Wynne quickly replied, "It is already served on the dining table." To everyone's surprise, Mr. Singers declared, "Promote all the staff involved in the cooking and also give them bonuses and salary increments, including you, Wynne," as he headed towards the dining table. Overwhelmed with shock and joy at Mr. Singer's unexpected praise, housekeeper Wynne and the other servants erupted into a celebration, dancing and singing in jubilation over their rewards. Rushing to the dining table, housekeeper Wynne found Mr. Singers happily enjoying the meal, his face beaming with a big smile. Housekeeper Wynne was trembling with joy as she watched Mr. Singers eat with newfound gusto. She couldn't contain the good news to herself, so she quickly made her way to Andrea's room to share it. However, upon reaching Andrea's room, she found her peacefully asleep. Housekeeper Wynne let out a sigh and quietly left the room. After preparing the meal, Andrea felt exhausted. Being pregnant for the first time made it challenging for her to manage the stress of carrying a baby and moving around the house. She soon drifted off to sleep from fatigue. Shortly after housekeeper Wynne departed, Mr. Singers entered the room wearing the same suit he had on when he returned from work. This behavior was out of the ordinary for Mr. Singers, as he had never before come back from work and headed directly to the dining room. However, he was filled with joy and curiosity upon learning that Andrea had cooked the meal. Gazing down at Andrea, a rare smile softened his usually stern countenance as she slept peacefully. Taking a seat on the edge of the bed, he gently brushed away a stray lock of hair that had fallen across her face. "Thank you, my dear. That meal was truly exquisite. I only wish your mother could have been here to taste your culinary masterpiece," Mr. Singers remarked wistfully, his voice tinged with longing. In a sudden movement, Andrea stirred, causing Mr. Singers to tense up in surprise. Her eyelids fluttered open and she regarded him with a quizzical expression. "You're back," she mumbled drowsily. "Yes, I am. Your cooking is truly remarkable. It's the best meal I've ever had," Mr. Singers replied sincerely, his praise genuine and heartfelt. In that moment, he knew that Andrea's culinary skills surpassed even those of his wife Rebecca. A look of delight washed over Andrea's face, dispelling any traces of drowsiness. Blushing slightly, she responded, "If you enjoyed it that much, Mr. Singers, I'll make sure to cook for you more often." Mr. Singers shook his head, expressing his desire for Andrea to always cook for him, but he declined the suggestion, citing her pregnancy as a reason. "You are pregnant. It's not advisable for you to always cook. How about after you have given birth? You will get tired of cooking for me," he said. After speaking, Mr. Singers chuckled, his face glowing with anticipation of seeing the baby in her stomach and enjoying the meals prepared by Andrea. Suddenly, Andrea asked, "Did you say something while I was sleeping?" She thought she heard Mr. Singer's voice while she was asleep, but couldn't quite make out his words. Mr. Singer's expression changed abruptly, and he quickly replied, "Nothing. You should go back to sleep. I will go and change." Without waiting for Andrea to respond, he hastened out of her room. Returning to his own room, he closed the door and stood motionless for 10 minutes. After changing into fresh attire, he strolled to the balcony overlooking his window and lit a cigarette. As he inhaled deeply, exhaling a perfect smoke ring, his mind was fraught with turmoil. "Forgive me, Andrea. How do I confess that I am the father you deserved all these years, but who was never there for you? How can I admit that I abandoned your mother to face her demise alone due to unpaid hospital bills? How can I reveal that I am the father you longed for at your mother's funeral, yet failed to find solace in my absence?" His voice trembled with emotion, his face etched with pain. The memory of his abrupt departure from Vegas, leaving his wife and child without a farewell, haunted Mr. Singers. That day, marred by his boss's relentless harassment at work and a chance encounter with a dangerous drug exchange. He was too fearful of drawing the attention of the cartels to his residence, so he promptly fled from Vegas. He didn't dare to return home or reach out to his wife, apprehensive that any contact could lead to their discovery and be used to expose his hiding place. "Are you okay?" Andrea's voice suddenly sounded behind him, causing him to freeze in shock. Swiftly extinguishing his cigarette, he composed himself, mustered a forced smile, and turned to face Andrea. "I'm fine," he replied. Andrea studied his expression and sensed that he wasn't being entirely truthful. The silence between them lingered. "How did you and your mom cope after your father left?" Mr. Singers inquired, prompting a puzzled look from Andrea at his choice of words. Recognizing his slip, Mr. Singers quickly amended his question, saying, "What I meant was, you mentioned your dad leaving you and your mom when you were young. How did things unfold back then? Could you share with me?" Andrea eyed Mr. Singers warily but refrained from voicing her question. Instead, she began recounting the hardships she and her mother had faced. "After my father's departure, creditors, both legitimate and not, descended upon us, seizing our belongings. Despite numerous reports to the police, no action was taken." Mr. Singers clenched his fists in anger as his mood darkened. He suspected the involvement of his former boss and the cartels, who seemed determined to make life difficult for his wife and child in order to force him out of hiding. "We were asked to pay the mortgage, but we couldn't. So we were kicked out of the house," Andrea said, wiping away tears as she spoke with a face full of sorrow. "Even after we were forced out, those my dad owed came knocking at our rented house. My mom had to take on 4 jobs, working tirelessly, but all the money was always taken away. She couldn't take it anymore and fell ill. I was young then, unable to pay the hospital bills. Mom was even kicked out of the hospital before passing away at home." Andrea's voice choked with emotion as she sobbed, and Mr. Singers fought the urge to step forward and embrace her. He was afraid he might tell Andrea he was the reason his mother suffered and died hopelessly, as well as for subjecting her to a miserable childhood. "Please tell me the name of the hospital," Mr. Singers asked, his clenched fists emitting a faint crackling sound. Andrea's expression transformed dramatically, a mix of resentment and fury overtaking her features. She vividly recalled the countless occasions she had beseeched the hospital to provide care for her mother, only to be ignored. On the day her mother passed away, she had dashed through a heavy downpour to plead with the doctors, yet her pleas fell on deaf ears. Even in death, she vowed never to forget the hospital's name. "Kai Clinic," Andrea responded. Mr. Singers nodded solemnly before drawing her into a comforting embrace. "I vow to seek justice for those who caused your mother suffering," he declared. Andrea nodded in acknowledgement, finding solace in his protective embrace. When Andrea grew drowsy, Mr. Singers escorted her to her room before stepping out with his phone in hand. After a quick call, Tate promptly arrived and joined him in the study. "Acquire this hospital and ensure you capture all the doctors who were in charge during these specific years," Mr. Singers instructed Tate as he handed over a paper detailing the dates of Rebecca's passing and the subsequent events. "I will take care of it immediately, Mr. Singers," Tate replied, taking the paper. "Mobilize our special forces. This is a top priority mission that needs to be addressed without delay," Mr. Singers said firmly. Tate stood at attention, understanding the gravity of the situation. He nodded before leaving Mr. Singers alone in the study. Alone in his study, Mr. Singer retrieved the photo from his breast pocket and tenderly ran his thumb over it. "Rebecca, I will seek justice for you. Those who caused you harm will face the consequences of their actions," he vowed quietly. His eyes welled up with tears, a fierce determination sparking within him as he recalled the memory of his late wife gifting him the cherished photo. A bittersweet smile graced his face as he remembered her playful words from the past. During a moment of dressing him for work, Rebecca had teasingly admonished, "Darling, I can't bear to lose you to those corporate ladies. The ring on your finger may not deter them, but with this photo, they'll see the beauty that is mine and back off." Since that day, Mr. Singer carried the photo everywhere, a reminder of his beloved wife's protective love. As his phone rang, a call from Tate came through. "Boss, the doctors and the management head have been apprehended," Tate informed him. "Send me the address," Mr. Singers requested, before abruptly ending the call and leaving his study room. As he prepared to depart from the mansion, he summoned housekeeper Wynne and instructed, "Inform Andrea that I have gone to meet a special guest who has just arrived in Sunshine City. Let her know not to worry if she wakes up and doesn't find me." After conveying his message, Mr. Singers entered one of his cars, and the convoy set off. An hour later, they reached an abandoned site on the riverbank in Sunshine City. "Tate, where are the 3 doctors and the former hospital management head been secured?" Mr. Singers inquired once they arrived. Tate stepped forward and confirmed, "Mr. Singers, they are all tied up inside." Mr. Singers nodded, then proceeded into the abandoned site where the hostages were being held captive. As he looked at their faces, he couldn't help but notice how much they had aged over the passing years. "Give them the pictures," Mr. Singers instructed Tate, who promptly relayed the order to the armed men in the room. Each of the bound men was handed a pair of photographs. "Do you recall the mother and child?" Mr. Singers inquired slowly, devoid of menace in his tone. The tied-up men gazed at the images intently, but after many years had passed, they couldn't recollect and shook their heads one by one. "In that case, they are not our targets. Dispose of them and dump their bodies in the river," Mr. Singer stated coldly. As the men trembled in fear at the sight of Mr. Singer's turning to leave, surrounded by gunmen readying their weapons to shoot, their minds raced. Suddenly, one of them exclaimed loudly, "I remember! This child, she was quite headstrong, always causing trouble at the hospital, and even once stole my stethoscope." Andrea left a lasting impact on him when she stole his stethoscope, returned to the hospital, and informed him that he could only retrieve it by accompanying her home to treat her mother. This encounter with an honest thief was a memorable one for him. Mr. Singer's expression turned grim upon hearing the doctor's words, his heart brimming with rage. "Sir, we were all under strict orders not to treat the little girl's mother. We had no choice but to comply," one of the doctors recalled, his voice tinged with regret. The hospital's owner, Mr. Gilbert, had appeared suddenly while they were treating Rebecca and had threatened to withhold their salaries if they dared to go against his directive. "Who is the hospital's owner?" Mr. Singers asked, his brows furrowing in frown. "Mr. Gilbert, who passed away a few years ago. He was pressured into it by the CEO of Flow Company," the doctor explained. He remembered Mr. Gilbert's frustration with the CEO's overbearing tactics, but he was powerless to resist. Mr. Singer's fists clenched tightly, his face darkening with anger as he realized the truth behind his wife's death. His former boss had continued to torment him even after he escaped then. Mr. Singer surprised the doctor and the head of the hospital management with his unexpected instructions to Tate. "Take them back to their homes and ensure they are compensated for their troubles." They had braced themselves for the worst during the kidnapping ordeal, only to be released without a ransom demand and even given rewards for their ordeal. After leaving the site, Mr. Singers didn't return to his mansion as expected. Instead, he headed straight to the airport and booked a night flight to Vegas City. Meanwhile, Andrea was unaware of these events as she lay sound asleep. Suddenly, she furrowed her brow, her hands gripping the duvet tightly as sweat formed on her forehead. Waking abruptly, she winced in pain as her sudden movement jolted the fetus in her womb. Descending from the bed, she strode towards the door and opened it, intending to make her way to Mr. Singer's room. However, housekeeper Wynne intercepted her on the way. "Ma'am Andrea, Mr. Singers has gone out to meet an important client. He asked me to inform you once you are awake," housekeeper Wynne told Andrea, whose already worried expression deepened. "I had a dream about him," Andrea suddenly disclosed. Housekeeper Wynne was taken aback by this revelation, but she refrained from prying further into the dream. Instead, she gently guided Andrea to a seat in the living room and proceeded to fetch her a glass of water from the kitchen. It was only 4 a.m., and some of the household staff were already up and about. "Ma'am Andrea, did you dream about Mr. Singers?" housekeeper Wynne inquired with a warm smile. She had always believed that the mansion would never have a lady of the house, as Mr. Singers had never shown any interest in women or brought any into the mansion in the 15 years she had worked there. She was genuinely pleased that Mr. Singer's marriage seemed to be going well. Andrea's stiff nod prompted housekeeper Wynne's smile to brighten. "Ma'am Andrea, Mr. Singers will be delighted to hear about your dream when he returns. Don't forget to share it with him," she said cheerfully. However, housekeeper Wynne's expression quickly shifted as she noticed the worry etched on Andrea's face, sensing that all was not well. "He was shot in my dream," Andrea finally confessed, her voice laden with anxiety and trepidation, her fear palpable. In a moment of shock, housekeeper Wynne froze. Having served Mr. Singers for 15 years, she was well aware of the numerous assassination attempts he had faced and the complex nature of his dealings. Despite the presence of numerous security details surrounding Mr. Singers, housekeeper Wynne believed it was impossible for anyone to reach him. "Ma'am Andrea, there's no need to worry. With those bodyguards around Mr. Singers, such a thing would be impossible. It's already morning. Let me take you out for a walk. It's good for the baby you're carrying," she reassured Andrea. However, Andrea's worries only seemed to grow despite Wynne's attempts to calm her. After breakfast, a car pulled up to the mansion, driven by one of the company's drivers. "Mrs. Singers, Mr. Singers has requested your presence at the office," the company driver informed Andrea. A frown creased housekeeper Wynne's face as she cast a suspicious glance at the company driver. Before she could respond, the house telephone began to ring. Hurriedly, she made her way to answer the phone. "Hello, this is Wynne speaking," housekeeper Wynne answered promptly as she picked up the receiver. "Hand the telephone to Andrea. It's Agatha speaking," a voice crackled from the receiver. Housekeeper Wynne promptly passed the phone to Andrea, unaware of Mr. Singer's directive for Agatha to leave the city and her suspension as his chief of staff. "Thank you," Andrea chirped, taking the call before handing the phone back to housekeeper Wynne. With astonishment, housekeeper Wynne observed Andrea trail the company driver to the waiting car. "Ma'am Andrea, where are you off to? Why not stay put at home? Mr. Singers will return shortly." Housekeeper Wynne expressed her concerns about the sudden departure orchestrated by Agatha. Anxious to see Mr. Singers, especially after a troubling nightmare, Andrea dismissed housekeeper Wynne's suggestion. "Mrs. Wynne, I can't rest until I speak with him," she insisted, declining to wait for Mr. Singers and opting to follow the company driver instead. As Andrea settled into the car, housekeeper Wynne hurried back inside the house to dial Mr. Singer's phone number. However, her attempts to reach him were in vain as his phone was switched off. A look of fear gripped housekeeper Wynne's face as she paced around the room, consumed by anxiety. After the car pulled away from the mansion, Andrea, seated in the back, gazed out at the passing houses with a furrowed brow. A sense of unease washed over her as she realized they were venturing into an unfamiliar neighborhood. Just weeks before, she had visited the Singers group with Mr. Singer and was acquainted with the area surrounding it. Where are we headed? Andrea's voice quivered with panic. The driver abruptly hit the brakes, turning to face her with a menacing smirk. Mr. Singers, unaware of Agatha's plans, had already arrived at Vegas City Airport. Mr. Gideon, the head of Singers Group in Vegas, stepped up to greet him upon receiving a call about Mr. Singer's surprise visit to Vegas. Upon getting the call, Mr. Gideon promptly left his marital bed to await Mr. Singers at the airport. Mr. Singers, the vehicles are prepared, and your instructions have been carried out. We have apprehended your former employer, Mr. Gideon stated as he approached. Good, Mr. Singers responded tersely before getting into the car. The convoy departed from the airport without delay. After an hour-long drive, they reached Mr. Singer's mansion on the outskirts of the city. Stepping out of the car, Mr. Singers entered his home. Where is she? Mr. Singers inquired of one of the guards inside the residence. She's in the room, the guard by the door replied, opening it for him. Mr. Singers entered the room and encountered a woman in her 60s, sitting in a wheelchair, bearing the unmistakable marks of age. Looking up at him with a confused expression, she inquired, Who are you? Why did you have me brought here? Don't you remember me, Boss Laurel? Mr. Singers replied, a faint smile playing on his lips as his hand casually rested in his pocket. After a long moment of scrutiny, Laurel shook her head, unable to place Mr. Singers. Firmly, she declared, I am the owner of Flow Company. My sons hold important positions in the city. They will realize I'm missing soon. With a knowing look, Mr. Singers shattered Laurel's hopes, stating, You've already been replaced. No one will notice your absence. As the truth sank in, Laurel's eyes dimmed with realization. 4 hours had passed since she went missing, and no one had even noticed. Mr. Singer's words held an undeniable truth that Laurel couldn't deny. After taking a deep breath, she gazed at Mr. Singer's face, trying to recall his identity. She asked tentatively, You are Singers? Yes, you remember me, Mr. Singers replied sharply. Laurel's eyes widened in astonishment. She hadn't laid eyes on Singers in years and had assumed he was long gone. The sight of him standing before her, still looking youthful and handsome despite their shared age, caught her off guard. He was the man she had desired so fervently in the past. Laurel had gone to great lengths to try to win Mr. Singers over, attempting to steal him away from Rebecca. However, he had remained loyal to his wife, rejecting Laurel unequivocally. Unable to accept the rejection, Laurel had made his life miserable at the company. Then, Singers had vanished without a trace, despite her relentless efforts to locate him. In her frustration, she had taken out her anger on his wife and daughter. As Laurel realized the purpose behind Mr. Singer's presence, her eyes lost their sparkle. Are you here for revenge? She asked boldly, unafraid of the consequences. Yes, Mr. Singers confirmed her intuition with just one word. Lowering his gaze, he asked, Laurel, I have never wronged you. Why did you treat Rebecca that way? Mr. Singers couldn't fathom why Laurel had been so cruel to Rebecca, ultimately leading to her tragic demise. Laurel's aged face twisted into a fierce expression as she suddenly let out a malicious laugh before fixing a piercing gaze on Mr. Singers. Rebecca, the daughter of the woman who tore my parents apart and destroyed our once happy home. Do you not think that is reason enough for her to suffer and meet her end? I wanted to take you away from her and her child, to make her feel the pain of losing her husband to another woman, just like my mother did. But you escaped. I could not fully exact my revenge, so I made her existence unbearable, driving her to her untimely death. After finishing her words, Laurel smirked and gazed at Mr. Singers. If you're here to make me feel remorse for my actions, just know it's impossible. She deserved everything that happened to her. You can kill me, but Rebecca will never return to you." As Laurel's words hit him, Mr. Singer's eyes blazed with fury, his fists clenched tightly, and a vein popped on his forehead. Laurel had truly provoked his anger with her callous words. Despite his intense emotions, Mr. Singers managed to rein in his rage. Recognizing that revenge only perpetuates a vicious cycle, he shook his head and declared, "I won't kill you. Instead, you will witness the destruction of Flow Company and everything you've built in your life." With those words, Mr. Singers turned away and departed, knowing that staying any longer might lead him to break his resolve and harm Laurel with his own hands. Leaving his mansion, he made a stop at a florist shop, purchasing a flower and a card before driving to the graveyard. After a brief conversation with the gravekeeper, he located Rebecca's grave and reverently placed a flower and a card on her resting place. "Rebecca, I am deeply sorry," he whispered, his voice thick with emotion as tears streamed down his face, his hand trying to stem the flow. "I failed to protect you. I let you down. I promise you, I will care for Andrea. I won't allow her to endure what you did. And those responsible for your pain, they will face justice," Mr. Singers vowed, his expression fierce with determination. For what felt like an eternity, he stood in silence before finally turning to leave, only to find himself face to face with Valentine Anderson. Valentine's brow furrowed in puzzlement as he observed Mr. Singer's tear-streaked face and emotional state. Suspicion crept into his gaze as he regarded the man before him and then glanced at Rebecca's grave. "Are you a friend of Andrea's mother?" Valentine inquired. He has been suspicious of Singers ever since he appeared in Andrea's life. Mr. Singers pursed his lips and began to walk away without replying. Valentine hurried after him, grabbing his arm as she asked with increasing anxiety, "Where is Andrea? Please tell me, where is she?" Valentine was well aware that seizing Mr. Singer's arm amounted to a declaration of war, yet he remained indifferent to the consequences. These past few days had been a torment for him. Consumed by thoughts of Andrea, he found himself unable to focus on anything else. Each visit to the graveyard was a desperate hope to encounter Andrea, but fate had him cross paths with Mr. Singers instead. In response to Valentine's aggression, Mr. Singers remained composed, fixing him with a penetrating gaze before calmly inquiring, "Do you truly deserve Andrea?" The question landed like a hammer blow, shattering Valentine's facade of confidence and resolve. His gaze faltered, and with a heavy heart, he released Mr. Singer's arm, a sudden realization dawning upon him he was unworthy of Andrea's love. Reflecting on Andrea's boundless kindness and unwavering dedication, Valentine was haunted by the cruel irony of his own actions. He had betrayed her trust, succumbing to infidelity and abandoning her in her time of need. As Mr. Singers turned away, leaving Valentine to ponder his own shortcomings, Valentine observed as Mr. Singers exited the graveyard, a sudden pang of emotion gripping his heart. Acting on impulse, he hurried after him. Emerging from the graveyard, Valentine noticed that Mr. Singers was now surrounded by his convoy, bodyguards stationed all around. "Mr. Singers?" Valentine called out, his voice unwavering. Startled, Mr. Singers turned to see Valentine standing before him, his eyes filled with anguish. "You never heard my full answer to your question," Valentine began, his words weighed down by emotion, each one causing him more pain as he spoke. Mr. Singers raised an eyebrow, intrigued by what Valentine had to say. "You have 1 minute," Mr. Singers replied. "I am unworthy of Andrea. She deserves someone far better than me. I do not merit her love or affection. I mistreated her, causing her to regret ever loving me," Valentine confessed, tears streaming down his face unabated, his sorrow on full display as he made his heartbreaking admission. Mr. Singers gazed silently at Valentine, acknowledging the truth in his words as he awarded him a silent point for recognizing his own unworthiness of Andrea. Valentine's sudden outburst filled the air, his fists clenched and his resolve evident on his face. "So what?" he exclaimed, his voice ringing out in determination. "Tell me, which enduring love story was not forged through trials, errors, betrayals, and failures?" Valentine's voice boomed as he locked eyes with Mr. Singers. A pang of guilt shot through Mr. Singer's heart as he remembered his own betrayal of Rebecca and the failure of his love trial, fleeing from Vegas and leaving Rebecca to face her struggles alone. "Mr. Singers," Valentine's voice softened, a warning laced within his words. "Andrea is a rare gem. Treat her with the care she deserves. Should you ever cause her harm, I will not hesitate to hold you accountable, even if it means laying down my own life." With this piece said, Valentine turned to return inside the graveyard, but before he could take another step, Mr. Singers halted him with a single word. "Hold on." Mr. Singers had suspected Valentine of trying to snatch Andrea away from him, but he was taken aback when Valentine showed up not to take her, but to hand her over and offer his support. Impressed by Valentine's bravery, Mr. Singers understood that true love sometimes means letting go when you can't provide the happiness and love someone deserves. "You still have a chance with her. Don't let me down. If you can carve out your own path and surpass me, she will come back to you," Mr. Singers said before getting into one of the cars and driving away. Valentine stood there, stunned by Mr. Singers' words. A new determination filled him, and he clenched his fists, his eyes reflecting a newfound resolve and fighting spirit. Little did Mr. Singers know that his simple words would be the catalyst for Valentine Anderson to become the most successful CEO in Vegas and beyond. While on his way to the airport, Mr. Singers powered on his phone, which he had turned off when he boarded the flight to Vegas City. As soon as his phone came to life, it began to ring. Glancing at the caller ID, he swiftly answered the call. "Mr. Singers, is Ma'am Andrea in the office with you?" Housekeeper Wynn's voice trembled with concern over the phone. Mr. Singer's expression shifted abruptly. "Where is Andrea?" he demanded sharply. "Housekeeper." Wynn proceeded to recount the events that had transpired, detailing Andrea's departure from the house. Mr. Singer's face darkened as he listened intently. After absorbing the information, he ended the call, his demeanor fraught with anxiety. "Where is Agatha?" Mr. Singers inquired icily as Tony finally picked up the phone. Silence followed on the other end. Unbeknownst to Mr. Singers, Tony was still in bed, taken aback to discover it was already 11 a.m. He rarely slept past 4 a.m. and recalled Agatha offering him a glass of juice before he drifted off. Realizing Agatha was no longer by his side, he finally spoke up, "She isn't with me." "Tony, you've let me down. Agatha has taken Andrea. Lock down Sunshine City, deploy all our resources. I want Andrea back within the hour, or your life won't be enough too for the life of my daughter," Mr. Singers ordered icily, his presence exuding a chilling aura and intense intent. Ending the call, he tapped the car seat and commanded, "Faster." Without hesitation, the driver signaled to the other vehicles, swiftly coordinating with the city's transport management unit to clear the way. A special pass was swiftly arranged for Mr. Singers, bypassing the usual Monday morning traffic chaos with ease. He arrived at the airport within the next 15 minutes and promptly boarded his private jet bound for Sunshine City. On board, 3 hackers awaited him with their laptops ready to report the results of their search. "Mr. Singers, the car that transported Mrs. Singers from the mansion has been located, but the abductors have since switched to 13 other vehicles, some of which have also been identified, resulting in a few arrests," one of the hackers reported. 200 helicopters have been deployed, and 700 roadblocks have been set up throughout the city. All roads exiting Sunshine City have been sealed off, and security measures have been implemented at the airport and seaport, another hacker added. Listening to the updates, Mr. Singers furrowed his brow in displeasure. He remained dissatisfied with the outcome until Andrea was found. Intensify the patrols, Mr. Singers abruptly issued a command. A historic event unfolded in Sunshine City as a no-fly zone was declared in its airspace. Hundreds of military helicopters loomed overhead, creating an atmosphere of impending conflict. The tension in the air of Sunshine City was palpable. The elite residents of Sunshine City were rattled by these actions and promptly convened a meeting. Even Mr. Sylvester was taken aback. He had not anticipated the extent of Mr. Singer's influence within both the military and political circles of the country. He had indeed underestimated his adversary. Gathered in the hall, Mr. Gibson's expression was grim. Had Mr. Singers not unveiled his power, he might have still harbored hopes of reclaiming the shares he had relinquished just days before. However, in the face of this display of strength, all such aspirations evaporated into thin air. Sylvester, you know Mr. Singers the best. What's happening? Are we at war? Asked a man in a white suit, his eyes wide with fear as he witnessed a scene straight out of a movie, a sight he had never thought he would experience in real life. His wife has been kidnapped, Sylvester sighed heavily, grateful that he had not gone through with his plan to harm Andrea. Mr. Singer's intense love for his wife was incomprehensible and suffocating, driving him to actions that left others bewildered. The elite members of Sunshine City exchanged worried glances, their faces reflecting the fear that gripped their hearts. They sighed and gave a minute of silence to the death courter who kidnapped Andrea. Agatha, unaware of her declared death, attempted to smuggle Andrea out of Sunshine City without success. Despite her elevated status, she found it impossible to achieve her goal. Frustrated and angry, Agatha struggled to contain her emotions. Miss Agatha, this place is no longer safe. If we stay, we will be discovered, a man a few meters away warned her. Their attempts to jam satellite and GPS tracking had failed, and the relentless pursuit by their adversaries left them defenseless. Miss Agatha, you said we were doing this for Mr. Singers. A man in the room stammered, fear evident in his voice and on his face. The incessant swarm of helicopters overhead far exceeded anything he had ever witnessed, both in reality and in images on screens and billboards. Quiet, all of you, Agatha yelled in frustration and anger. Agatha was taken aback by Mr. Singer's unexpectedly lavish display of affection towards Andrea. Despite working alongside him for many years, she had never suspected he harbored such intense feelings. Glancing at the door with a steely expression, Agatha's anger boiled over, propelling her towards it. With a swift motion, she yanked the door open and stormed inside. Her eyes locked onto Andrea, who lay bound on the floor. What have you given him? Why does he favor you so? Why did he choose you over me? Agatha's voice rose to a frenzied pitch as she unleashed her pent-up emotions, teetering on the brink of madness. Tears cascaded down Andrea's terrified face as she met Agatha's furious gaze. I'll put an end to this today. If I can't have him, neither can you, she vowed, her voice trembling with desperation. In a sudden, chilling move, Agatha brandished the gun she had concealed all along, causing Andrea's eyes to widen in terror. Unbeknownst to her, the hideout where they sought refuge was already besieged by Mr. Singer's men. Damn it! We've been discovered. The man in charge of the control room cursed in anger as he swiftly rose to his feet. Before he could react, a bloody hole appeared on his forehead, courtesy of a sniper positioned 3 blocks away. Agatha's other men scattered in hiding were not as fortunate. Tony and his men stormed in, leaving a trail of bodies in their wake. Mr. Singers had made it clear, no hostages. Anyone involved in his daughter's kidnapping was to be eliminated on sight. As the gunfire drew closer to Andrea's location, panic set in among the men Agatha had stationed in the room. One of them burst into the room where Andrea was held captive and urgently whispered to Agatha, "Miss Agatha, we've been found. We need to go." Agatha turned to him, her voice devoid of emotion. "You all leave. I'm not coming with you." "You've lost your mind," the man exclaimed in disbelief before fleeing. He regrouped with the others and they headed towards the secret escape route. Unfortunately, they were intercepted and gunned down. Agatha seemed indifferent to the fate of the others. Instead, she fixed a sinister gaze on Andrea. "I always dreamed of the day I would marry Mr. Singers. You ruined everything. You deserve to die. However, if I kill you, Mr. Singers will never marry me. If I keep you alive as my hostage, I can force him to marry me. How does that sound?" After her chilling speech, Agatha smiled brightly at Andrea, sending shivers down her spine. "Agatha," Tony interjected, his voice filled with disappointment and hurt. He couldn't bear to see the woman he deeply loved stoop so low. Agatha abruptly rose to her feet and stepped over Andrea, aiming her gun directly at her while fixing a sharp gaze on Tony. "Where is he?" she demanded impatiently. A look of concern crossed Tony's face as he received a notification through the earpiece about Mr. Singer's imminent arrival. His expression changed dramatically, realizing the gravity of the situation. "Agatha, please stop this madness. I can help you escape. You need to run away right now," Tony urged urgently, his voice tinged with fear for Agatha's safety, knowing what Mr. Singers was capable of. Ever since learning Andrea's true identity from Mr. Singers, Tony understood the significance of her to him. He was unsure if Mr. Singers would show any mercy towards Agatha. Approaching Agatha with apprehension, Tony pleaded, "Please, Agatha, don't make any sudden moves. I don't want anyone to get hurt." Ignoring his warning, Agatha, consumed by anger, brandished the gun and warned, "Stay back, Tony, or I'll shoot." Despite Agatha's threats, Tony's concern for her safety outweighed his fear. Deep down, he still cared for her, even after all the lies and deceit. He couldn't bear the thought of her coming to harm at the hands of Mr. Singers. With determination, Tony took another step forward, prompting Agatha to scream in fury and lash out at Andrea, who lay defenseless on the floor. "Agatha!" Tony cried out as he watched in horror as Agatha's attack caused Andrea to cry out in pain. Shocked by Agatha's callous actions toward pregnant Andrea, Tony's expression turned to one of disbelief. He never imagined Agatha capable of such cruelty. Gathering his thoughts, Tony took a deep breath before speaking, his disappointment evident in his voice. "Agatha, hurting others won't make Mr. Singers love you. It will only push him further away. Do you truly believe this is the way to win his affection?"